Chapter 1006. The first person Yi Fan thought of was ruthless. Who else could it be other than her? She was the most breathtaking woman since ancient times. She was proud of herself and didn't live to become an immortal. He had once fought against Hua Yunfei and faced the great Tao Aquarius more than once. He knew its profoundness was unparalleled. This was created by the most talented ruthless person. She used a mortal body to prove her Tao and become an emperor. Even Komatsu was fascinated. An immortal medicine offered itself to follow her, but the fairy didn't care. This was truly mysterious. How could the other great figures, whose names had shaken the past and present, endure this? The ruthless person lived a proud and aloof life. All the divine masters bowed their heads to her and looked down on the past, present, and future. Yet here her face was filled with tears and sadness. Yi Fan was in a daze. Only Polygonum multiflorum could see such a scene. Who else in the world could see it? In the eyes of the world, she was an unrivaled woman who was known as ruthless. It was hard to imagine that she had such a weak side. She could cut down the stars, pluck the sun and moon, and slaughter through the world. She was the most unfathomable woman since ancient times. The word ruthless shook the ages. Polygonum multiflorum naturally hadn't seen the ruthless person's dazzling style. It only felt that the woman was very beautiful, almost unreal. Her face was filled with tears and looked delicate and lovely. Of course, her divine abilities were also heaven-defying. This is the place. Polygonum multiflorum brought them forward and arrived at a cliff. Yi Fan was immediately stunned, and Komatsu also sat on the ground. A waterfall fell down, covering half of the cliff. This wasn't water, but a chaotic river that flowed down from the cliff. Polygonum multiflorum told them that this was the miracle left behind by that fairy. Over 200,000 years ago, the entire Kunlun trembled and almost collapsed. In the past, the ruthless person was heartbroken. She once raised her head and let out a sorrowful sigh. Out of the 9 moons in the sky, 8 fell. Her fine black hair danced in the wind and her face was filled with tears. She made the world collapse. Yi Fan's heart trembled. The ancient emperors were too powerful. With a wave of their hands, they could pluck the stars and capture the moon, destroying the universe, causing the hearts of people to tremble. I've seen it with my own eyes. She raised her hand and cut down the stars in the sky to forge a tablet. Polygonum multiflorum said with a trembling voice. There was a piece of blood clothes on that cliff that could still be seen. It was protected by primal chaos, still imperishable even after more than 200,000 years had passed. It floated on the cliff. Next to it was a steel that glistened brilliantly. Yi Fan opened his heaven eyes and looked carefully. Vaguely, he saw a line of words on the blood-soaked clothes, short and hurried. I'm going to die. But what about my sister? Yi Fan's heart trembled. It was no wonder that Vicious would come here. How could he remain calm after seeing the words written on his robes? She was powerful and unparalleled in the world. She wanted to compete with the heavens, but she couldn't resurrect a corpse that had been dead for many years. That stone tablet was refined from a star. It flickered with silver splendor, shining from ancient times until now. Vicious Tao traces were engraved on it. Boundless primal chaos curled about it, protecting everything here. This was definitely a rare treasure. If someone could activate it, they could definitely sweep through a star domain. However, it was likely that no one would be able to take a step closer. Those who dared to touch the stone tablet established by Vicious would undoubtedly die. Do you see it now? This boundless primal chaos waterfall flowed out from the words on the stone tablet. It hasn't dried up even after more than 200,000 years. It is an unsurpassed miracle in Kunlun, said Polygonum multiflorum. For more than 200,000 years, all powerful creatures would choose this place to refine weapons. As long as they could draw out a strand of primal chaos energy as a flame, they could refine magical treasures and increase their grade by a large amount. Polygonum multiflorum kindly told them about this place. They could reforge weapons here and use the primal chaos as a flame to refine them into treasured weapons. Yi Fan's cauldron naturally didn't need to be like this. He would be able to find it when he transcended his tribulation in the future. He took out the small ornaments on Komatsu's body and refined them, such as the small medicinal basket on its back, and the bell made from zenith luo silver essence. There are dangers ahead. There are deities living there. I don't dare to enter for fear of being caught. Polygonum multiflorum warned. He had never been to this place before, so he didn't know what kind of immortal ascension place was nurturing. Yi Fan nodded and let it leave. He then continued on his way with Komatsu. Back then, the Yuhua God dynasty escorted the hope of becoming immortals to this place for restoration. It seems that Vicious' older brother was one of them. He most likely died here. Roar! A muffled thunderous sound rang out. A three-headed lion shone with golden light, stirring up the winds and clouds. It opened its mouth and inhaled. The essence energy within 10 miles was sucked clean into its mouth. There really are some powerful strange beasts here. Only the immortal veins of Kunlun can nurture such fierce bugs, Yi Fan said. The essence energy of heaven and earth had dried up, but Kunlun was an exception. Because the life essence energy of the entire ancient planet had gathered here, it could naturally give birth to auspicious beasts and divine bugs. This golden lion was extremely powerful. It actually had the strength of a sect master. It should be a top existence in Kunlun. With a roar, the wind and clouds surged and the mountains trembled. The golden lion's eyes were like torches, flickering with light. It discovered Yi Fan and the others at a glance. It opened its mouth and sucked hard, wanting to swallow them as well. Yi Fan's powerful aura was released. The golden lion trembled on the spot, revealing a look of disbelief. It then turned around and fled, running towards the wilderness. An hour later, Yi Fan crossed the wilderness and entered an open land. There were only a few large mountains in front of him. They were all very majestic and weren't connected together. The terrain was strange. Could it be that there are some divine beasts here? The aura of this place isn't ordinary. There seems to be a very powerful existence here. Yi Fan's heart moved. Komatsu cried out. It carried the small medicine basket on its back and climbed onto a mountain peak. It dug out a precious medicine that was overflowing with brilliance. It was extremely happy. Its harvest these few days was great. It picked many ancient medicines and already obtained 3 stalks of young medicine king medicines. They were all around 50,000 to 60,000 years old. They were all given to Yi Fan as a form of filial piety. A loud roar sounded. The fluctuations were intense, almost making Komatsu flip over. The golden lion stood guard here, staring at Yi Fan with shock and fear. In addition, an old flood dragon flew over. Its entire body was curling with fiery light, as if it had just flown out from a volcano. A world-covering heat wave was released, burning down a large region. 2 sect master-level strange beasts are guarding the mountain gate. It seems like there really is a powerful existence here. Could it be that it severed the Tao? The powerful aura around Yi Fan's body was released, immediately leaving the old flood dragon and golden lion terrified. They continuously backed up, their bodies trembling. Up ahead, there was a great mountain that towered into the clouds. There were fire pines that took root in the cracks between the rocks. This was a type of strange plant. It was shaped like an ancient pine tree, but it liked flames. It often grew in magma, and was quite extraordinary. There was a fiery cave at the base of the mountain that spat out waves of smoke. Raging flames surged, and a roar sounded. The mountains trembled, and many large rocks tumbled down from the great peaks, creating rumbling noises. The golden lion and old flood dragon both revealed expressions of fear, laying down on the ground. It was clear that they were intimidated by that divine might. This was their master, and it seemed like he was blaming them. Tao Severing King. Divine light flashed past Yi Fan's eyes. Even though he knew that Kunlun's immortal veins were unordinary, he never thought that he would truly encounter an extremely powerful existence. However, he still didn't feel any fear. He longed to meet an opponent. Fiery clouds overflowed into the heavens. Scarlet multicolored light soared into the sky, as if there were 10,000 dragons leaping about. It was a magnificent scene. A long hiss that was like the roar of dragons and tigers shook this mountain region. A streak of fiery red radiance surged, and a handsome strange beast rushed over. It was too fast to the point where the golden lion and flood dragon couldn't react in time before they were kicked flying. Even Yi Fan was shocked. It trod on fiery clouds, and its speed was like that of chasing the wind and lightning. It had reached the pinnacle of speed in this realm. Apart from Yi Fan's raw character art, there seemed to be nothing else that could compare to it. This was a Longma. It trod on raging flames, and its entire body was fiery red. It was as arrogant as a deity, and each hoof sent the old flood dragon and the golden lion flying. It was extremely dissatisfied with them, and it had a type of attitude that looked down on the world. It let out a long hiss, and it wasn't a horse's neigh. It was as deafening as a dragon's cry, and even the clouds in the sky scattered. It rushed towards Yi Fan, and its hooves that were even larger than the mouth of a bull stomped towards Yi Fan's chest. How was this a horse? When it leapt, it was like a dragon, and its aura was terrifying. After Yi Fan severed his Tao, he had never seen a creature that dared to look down on him like this. This was truly a human race divine body that was not just in name, but in reality. It even shattered the sky. No wonder the golden lion and old flood dragon were terrified. Yi Fan didn't dodge, and instead pointed out with his hand, pressing against the horse's hoof. The Longma immediately roared, and its entire body trembled violently. It revealed a look of disbelief, and then it leapt up, rushing over. Hong Long Long. The Longma trod on clouds, rushing out several dozen li. Because it was too fast, the several dozen great mountains in front of it collapsed. Not long after, its voice could be heard. This was a terrifying scene. This horse's divine might exceeded one's imagination. It chased after the wind and lightning, and when it trampled on the sky and earth, it was difficult for there to be anyone in this world that could suppress it. Even Yi Fan was shocked. Even though he held back a bit, only pointing out a finger, and it was far from using his full strength, it was still not something an ordinary Tao-severing expert could endure. If it was any other king, they would have definitely turned into a bloody paste. However, this Longma didn't die, and it wasn't injured either. It leapt through the sky, and it was incredibly ferocious. This was definitely a rare dragon species. He couldn't help but carefully size it up. This horse's entire body was fiery red, just like a dragon's body. Raging flames surged under its forehooves, and its body was covered with dragon scales that were like phoenix blood gold, glistening brilliantly. At the same time, it also had long fiery red hair like a horse's mane, and it was even brighter than silk. There wasn't a single strand of hair that was out of place. It was recorded in ancient books, Longma, the essence of heaven and earth, and its form is that of a horse's body and dragon's scales. That is why it is called Longma. It is 8 feet and 5 inches tall. The more Yi Fan looked, the more shocked he became. This was exactly the same as what was recorded in ancient books. This wasn't an ordinary body, but one that was nurtured from the essence of heaven and earth. This was a type of strange beast that had only been seen a few times since ancient times, and it represented auspiciousness. Marquis of the Imperial Secretariat? The Fushi clan has the world under heaven, and the Longma is carrying a map out of the river. No wonder it didn't die after taking a finger from me. It's actually a Longma. Yi Fan murmured to himself. In the current world, there weren't many Tao-severing monarchs that could withstand a single strike from him. This wasn't arrogance but the truth. He had successfully reversed the great Tao, and his strength had reached a terrifying level. The Longma let out a roar that shook the 9 heavens. Its entire body was fiery red, and it charged over again while stepping on the clouds and flames. This time, Yi Fan opened one palm and stretched out all 5 fingers, pressing towards the Longma. However, this horse was also extremely arrogant, and it leaped into the air, leaping tens of feet high and stepping on his golden palm. Bang! The Longma's body shook, and its 4 hooves shattered the sky as it charged into the distance. A trickle of blood flowed out from the corner of its mouth, but it was still alive. Its blood essence was still strong, and it was only lightly injured. This time, Yi Fan was truly shocked. In the entire world, there weren't many Tao-severing monarchs that could suppress this horse. His palm could definitely crush mountains and destroy mountains, but this horse was able to withstand it. This should be the god that Polygonum Multiflorum spoke of. Yi Fan took a step into the sky and once again stretched out his hand to press forward, using great strength. The dragon horse knew how powerful he was, so it leapt into the air and crushed a mountain. It stood in the sky and stared at him. This kind of dragon steed that was born from heaven and earth was only owned by the legendary ancient saint emperors. Yi Fan's heart moved. If he could subdue it as a mount, he would definitely be able to trample all enemies when he returned to Big Dipper one day. Chapter 1007. The Longma stepped into the sky, its entire body pulsating with flames. Its scales, which resembled the scarlet gold of phoenix blood, were sparkling and translucent. Its entire body was radiating with light, and there were 2 dragon horns on its head. It glared at Yi Fan furiously. This dragon steed was excessively arrogant. It charged over dozens of times, its basin-sized hooves stomping directly at the top of Yi Fan's head. Every time it did so, it would shatter the heavens. Its breath took the shape of a horned dragon, and its dragon elephant power was inexhaustible. Yi Fan clicked his tongue in wonder. This Longma's strength was beyond ordinary people's imagination. It was actually able to fight against him. This was definitely an anomaly, a rare divine steed nurtured by heaven and earth. He estimated that this Longma's hooves could destroy the moon, and its strength was comparable to that of a meteor crashing into the earth. It would not take much effort to trample an existence like Pope to death. Moving mountains and filling seas were useless against it. The Longma let out another long neigh. The mane on its neck throbbed like flames, and its entire body flickered with scarlet light. It was exceptionally divine. After being hit by Yi Fan a few times, a trickle of blood flowed out from the corner of its mouth, but it was not seriously injured. It was full of energy. As its 4 hooves stomped, the mountains within a radius of dozens of miles were all crushed into powder, collapsing into the dust. Its strength was extremely shocking. It charged over again, and this time, divine light surged as it leaped, drowning the entire place. The pair of dragon horns on its head clanked, and thousands of scarlet sword waves slashed out, raising the entire place to the ground. Komatsu carried a small medicine basket on his back and hit on Yi Fan's shoulder. He was dumbfounded as he watched. He was extremely envious of this kind of powerful strength, and he muttered to himself. Yi Fan's attacks became heavier with each strike, but this Longma could completely withstand his strength. It could only be said that it was a rare species, worthy of being called a divine fetus of heaven and earth. Roar! Suddenly, a roar came from the distance. Waves of blood chi rose from the horizon, and 3 beams of light rushed into the sky. They were like 3 blood-colored pillars that supported the sky, piercing through the 9 heavens. Yi Fan's eyes shone brilliantly. He discovered that 3 Dao Severers had come. The immortal veins of Kunlun were truly astonishing. There were a total of 4 kings, which was unavoidably shocking. Sand and pebbles flew in the distance. Some mountain peaks were uprooted and blown into the air. Dark clouds pressed down like the bottom of a black pot. Komatsu was scared and nervous. He held his small medicine basket and sat on Yi Fan's shoulder obediently. He grabbed Yi Fan's collar with his little paw and refused to let go. Even if 4 path cutters attacked him at the same time, Yi Fan would not care. In this world, there was no one who could hurt him. However, things had gone beyond his expectations. The 3 Dao severing ancient demons were not on the same side as Longma. Seeing that it was in trouble, they rushed to kill it. Longma let out a long hiss, and the flames on its body flourished even more. Its entire body was scarlet like blood, and mist surged. It spat out dragon-shaped pillars of chi from its mouth and nose. Seeing this, Yi Fan retreated to the side and did not attack again. This was a meeting of the 4 great kings in the immortal veins of Kunlun. He also wanted to take a look. Demonic chi surged over. It did not seem like a gas, but more like a group of mountains pressing down. Apart from the Dao Severers, no one could withstand it. The Golden Lion and the old Flood Dragon had long since escaped without a trace. Moo! The sound of a wild ox rang out. A big guy the size of a small mountain, golden all over, and with horns on his head, charged over. This was an ox king. Every strand of its hair glowed. It was 300 meters tall, and when it ran like this, its power was astonishing. A pair of large horns pointed at Longma. On the other side, a black ape stepped on the heaven and earth. Black mist surged all over its body, and it was 300 meters tall. It was like a roaring deity, and it held a long blade in its hand that shone with dense black light as it hacked down. The third creature was a Taoist. He chose to transform into human form. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, and his face was waxy yellow. He looked sickly, but he was the most terrifying. This was because he held a black dragon spear in his hand, and it emitted an aura that made one's heart jump. This was the reason why they dared to attack. The Taoist attacked Longma with the spear in his hand, and it greatly frightened it. It had no choice but to leap and dodge to deal with the three. Yi Fan opened his heavenly eye and looked at the black metal spear in the Taoist's hand. His heart skipped a beat. What kind of weapon was this? It actually made him feel a chill run down his spine. Longma, this spear has been activated today. You will definitely lose. Give up the fire god cave. The Taoist shouted. A black light surged from the black spear and pierced through the clouds. The three kings of the Tao Severing realm were all very strong, and they weren't weak. Because of the black dragon spear, Longma was forced into a passive state. It was exhausted from dealing with it, and it was in danger of being killed. Yi Fan didn't make a move. He led the Komatsu and watched coldly from the side. The four beast kings fought within the immortal vein of Kunlun. They fought until the sun and moon lost their light, and the heaven and earth became dark. Demonic aura spread out for thousands of miles. Buzz. Suddenly, the black spear trembled, and the astonishing aura was extinguished. The black light converged, and it disappeared. Longma let out a long hiss, and flames flickered all over its body. It immediately recovered its power, and shook off the demonic aura in all directions. The bright heaven and earth reappeared. As the two sides confronted each other, Longma's eyes were filled with disdain. It was extremely arrogant as it stared at the three beast kings, and especially at the Taoist with waxy yellow skin. The Golden Ox King, the giant black ape, and the Taoist glanced at each other and turned to leave. They relied on the black spear to attack, but they didn't expect to fail at the last moment. Their divine might didn't last long. Longma counterattacked. It was as fast as lightning, and thunder descended from all directions. There were flames everywhere, and there were even bolts of lightning under its four hooves. It rode on the light as it moved. Pa! The divine chariot was extremely fast and violent. It galloped forward, and in a flash, the Golden Ox King's bones and tendons were broken. Then the dragon horn flashed with brilliance, and a trace of Tao shot out. The giant black ape spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Boom! In the end, it stood up like a human, and its front hooves stomped down like the great seal of the celestial emperor. The Taoist used the black spear to meet the attack, but he was sent flying. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and his entire body was overflowing with blood. Yi Fan nodded. As expected of the Longma that was born from heaven and earth, it wasn't born from an ordinary body, and it was able to easily defeat a Severing Tao King of the same level. With its combat strength, there were almost no opponents in the world that could suppress it. It was only afraid of the black spear just now. Longma was full of contempt for the three beast kings. It gave the Taoist another hoof, but it didn't kill. The relationship between the two seemed to be very complicated. Clang! Yi Fan used the army formula and instantly took over the black spear. It was completely black, and there was a dragon coiled around it. It was unknown what kind of metal it was made from. The body of the spear was heavy, and it actually weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. The tip of the spear was sharp, but it was dull and lusterless. Yi Fan held it in his hand and gently spun it. A powerful current of air flowed out, piercing through the void. He stabbed with all his might, and from dozens of miles away, a mountain in the distance was turned to dust. Yi Fan didn't feel any special laws, but this weapon was clearly not ordinary. He tried to break it, but it didn't break. It was extremely sturdy. One had to know that ordinary rulers' weapons couldn't hurt him. Most of them could be easily destroyed, so they were nothing to him. Apart from the dragon horse, the other three beast kings were all scared. Yi Fan's every movement was like that of a deity. With a single thrust of his spear, the great peaks that were dozens of miles away were reduced to ashes. This was the performance of an unparalleled expert. The dragon horse had a bad premonition and wanted to escape, but Yi Fan used his true power. He used the Rho formula and sat on the dragon horse's body, giving off the might of lightning. This divine steed nurtured by heaven and earth exploded in anger. It had always been incomparably arrogant, So how could it tolerate being ridden by a person? All kinds of divine arts were used at the same time, and its whole body emitted blazing immortal light. However, Yi Fan sat firmly on the horse's back with the dragon spear in hand. He was unmoving as if he was rooted to the ground. All kinds of laws and secret arts were ineffective against him. Longma roared angrily. The clouds in the sky rose and fell, and the mountains in all directions trembled. Its furious charge crushed countless divine mountains and destroyed many dragon veins, but it couldn't get rid of the plaster on its body. Yi Fan had made up his mind to subdue this horse. It was recorded in the ancient books that divine steeds could only be obtained by ancient sacred emperors. They were extraordinary and seemed to represent a kind of fate. He wanted to step into the starry sky one day. He had tried it just now. Longma's speed was second only to the line formula, and it could chase lightning and the sun. It possessed the fastest speed in the universe and was unbelievably fast. Longma hadn't surrendered yet, but the three beast kings beside it were terrified. They expressed their goodwill, and were willing to give the black dragon spear to him. They also told him about its origin. This spear was very mysterious. It actually flew over from the outer realm, and inserted itself into the Kunlun immortal vein. At the same time, it carried a ball of fire god origin. No one knew what kind of divine object it was. Yi Fan was shocked. This spear's origin was indeed extraordinary. It flew over from the outer realm, which meant that there must have been a life and death battle in the starry sky. This weapon was most likely a divine object of the saint level. No one had come looking for it for so many years, so the original owner might be in danger. The Golden Bull King, the Ape King, the Taoist, and the Dragon Horse originally minded their own business, and even had a certain level of friendship with each other. However, when they were fighting over the cave that was formed by the source of Fire God, they had a conflict and often fought after that. The dragon spear was obtained by the Taoist, and the fire god origin merged with the Kunlun immortal vein. It transformed into a strange energy and formed a cave dwelling. Cultivating inside could yield twice the results with half the effort. Yi Fan rode on Longma. No matter how it struggled, it was of no use. He was as steady as Mount Tai. He stretched out a palm and grabbed it. The ground rumbled and a flame rushed up. A ball of dazzling divine light appeared on the surface. So this is the fire god origin. What exactly is it? He stared at the ball of liquid. It was as viscous and blazing like magma. When it came into contact with spiritual energy, it could transform into strands of life light. It made one's entire body comfortable, and could speed up one's cultivation. Yi Fan chopped off half of it, and kept it in the cauldron. He left the other half for the three beast kings. He then patted Longma's head and said, "You and the three of them are old acquaintances. Why don't we split it evenly? I've taken half of it for you. Come with me." Longma was enraged and refused to yield. Yi Fan shook the dragon spear in his hand and stabbed it forward. With a boom, the mountains in front of him disappeared. They were turned into ashes by his attack. Although you are a divine chariot born from heaven and earth, your cultivation level is too weak compared to your own body. Come with me and I'll let you roam the stars. Longma was still extremely unwilling. However, it could no longer get rid of the plaster on its body. Moreover, it could no longer control its body. It strode forward and walked towards the place where it had the hope of becoming an immortal. Komatsu jumped in front of Longma, and took out a stalk of precious medicine from the small medicine basket, to feed it to express its goodwill. In the end, it was almost trampled to the ground by its hooves. Fortunately, the little fellow was quick-witted and leapt up with a so sound. 2 days later, Yi Fan arrived at the deepest part, and saw the pure land where the hope of becoming an immortal was nurtured. However, it was difficult for him to take another step forward because he lacked the 9th corner topographic map. The scene in front of him was magnificent and extremely astonishing. The place where the immortal was nurtured could be seen. This kind of topography defied common sense. Yi Fan had never seen anything like this in his life. There were a total of over 10,000 mountain peaks clustered together to form a valley. Every mountain peak was like a dragon's head, and it was as if they were formed by the heavens. Every dragon's mouth was spitting out essence. Immortal energy was dense as it rose and condensed within the valley. It was indescribably mysterious and unfathomable. Yifan was dumbfounded. At first, he thought that these dragon heads were carved by people with supernatural craftsmanship. However, upon closer inspection he was shocked. This was formed from the power of nature. Over 10,000 mountain peaks were nourished by the life essence energy of ancient stars one after another. They all developed intelligence on their own, turning into supreme treasures of the mortal world, possessing their own divine wills. It could be said that these 10,000 mountain peaks were naturally formed by heaven and earth, all of them with dragon heads. It was unknown just how many ancient stars worked together to nurture them. There were over 10,000 dragon bodies below the earth veins, and only the dragon heads were raised high above the earth's surface. They spat out all types of heaven and earth essence to nurture the immortal true immortal land. Unimaginable! Yifan sighed in admiration. This type of topography was exceptional after all. Even if there was no hope of becoming an immortal in the future, these 10,000 true dragons would still be revived, all of them possessing divine wills. This was the hope that was produced after many ancient stars dried up. Once these dragon heads were revived, that would be the magnificent scene of 10,000 dragons soaring into the sky. They all spit out essence, helping others like this, turning them into an immortal ascension land. It really is a heaven-defying method after all, Yifan said to himself. Then he broke out into a cold shiver. This type of method seemed to have exceeded the Yuan Taoist masters. The grasp and understanding of the topography was even greater. These dragon heads were definitely nurtured naturally. What kind of person would be able to accomplish all of this? In an instant he thought of many things. 1,000,000 years ago, there was only one great force that had this kind of power, and that was the Celestial Court. The Yuan Taoist master's inheritance was very mysterious, and no one knew where it started. Could it be that it could be traced back to an even more ancient period? Yifan thought of a possibility. If the 99 Dragon Mountains were controlled by the Celestial Court, and descended upon ancient stars with life one after another, then who was it that provided them with this method? Could it be that there was an existence that surpassed the Yuan Taoist master in the ancient heaven who provided them with this idea? And that was why there was this process of becoming immortal that lasted for millions of years? Yifan was shocked by himself. His thoughts started to wander, and he thought of many things in an instant. Later on, the emperor of the Celestial Court died, and the gods of the various regions were in chaos. All of this was naturally put on hold, or rather, there was a huge problem. Was the Yuhua God dynasty the remnant power of the Celestial Court? In the next moment, Yifan thought of the Yuan Taoist master's later years, and then recalled the scene of tens of thousands of ghost soldiers passing through. Could it be that this was also related to the ancient heaven? This is the land of immortals, and I actually succeeded in coming here. I've gone further than the Yangxiang clan. If I retreat just like this, I'm really unwilling. Yifan's eyes were clear. He stared at the tens of thousands of dragon heads on the mountain peaks. Giant dragons circled around, flying and overlapping each other. They were all formed from draconic chi. In the center of the celestial valley, it was a vast expanse. Auspicious energy gushed out, and all kinds of multicolored lights shot out. What exactly was inside? Yifan desperately wanted to see it. Chapter 1008. Longma spat out 2 streaks of white energy in the shape of flood dragons. It was filled with reverence towards this place and didn't dare behave atrociously. It calmed down and didn't compete with Yifan anymore. Yifan took a detour around this place and didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. The tens of thousands of dragon head peaks were filled with killing intent at every step. He didn't have a map of the last corner, so he couldn't enter. Komatsu muttered and almost couldn't move anymore. It saw many old medicines in the immortal ascension land up ahead. Every single one of them was translucent and resplendent, and a sweet fragrance wafted out. After endless years, how many people could enter this place? After being nourished by draconic energy and immortal light for so long, this place had long developed spirituality. Every single medicinal herb produced here was priceless. The tens of thousands of mountain peaks were all in the shape of dragon heads. They were all lifelike and possessed intimidating draconic might. They were all formed naturally and could be called the work of the gods. There were precious medicines on every dragon head peak, as if they were carved from coral and pearls. They were all dazzling and dazzling. Forget about Komatsu, even Longma's eyes were a bit dazed and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. These tens of thousands of dragon head peaks were all supreme treasures. The mountain bodies could be used as divine materials to refine weapons, and there was even less to say about the medicines they produced. Yi Fan couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Many ancient stars with life had dried up to produce this kind of immortal ascension land. As expected, it seized the fortune of the heaven and earth. It was truly shocking. At this moment, he already saw several tens to over 100 stalks of Medicine King medicines. They were surrounded by immortal energy and flickered with precious light, attracting one's soul. Medicine Kings were extremely difficult to nurture. They needed to be continuously watered with spirit milk of the earth and grow for over 80,000 years before they could be called Medicine Kings. Who could wait for such a long time? 80 to 90,000 years was something that even great ancient emperors would have long reached the end of their lifespans. Only a place like this could absorb the life essence of an entire ancient star and nurture it for an endless amount of time. Only then could many stalks be produced. Yi Fan carefully observed. This kind of geographical layout was too extraordinary and simply didn't make any sense. Even with his most powerful origin technique, he still couldn't find any traces of human intervention. However, he had a premonition from the Yuan Taoist master's intuition. Even if this place was extraordinary, it couldn't have reached this level. Vaguely, he felt that someone had used a heaven-defying method to nurture all of this. After being washed and baptized by the river of time, after millions of years, it had finally turned into nature, and was no different from nature. He was looking for a weakness. Without the ninth corner topographical map, there was no way to enter. However, he was very unwilling and wanted to use his own heaven origin divine technique to break it. Xiaosong carried the small medicine basket on his back. He turned his head back with every step he took, circling around the dragon mountain absent-mindedly. The little fellow couldn't wait to jump in and happily pluck the ancient medicine. The dragon horse also breathed out dragon chi from its nose and mouth. It did not want to bicker with Yi Fan for the time being. Its dragon eyes widened and flickered non-stop. It was silently calculating to see if it could use its great mystical abilities to create some fodder. This miracle wasn't in front of the Dragon Head Peak, but in this safe area. Dozens of fist-sized stars were embedded in a huge rock, emitting a gentle radiance. This miracle was not in front of the 10,000 Dragon Head Peaks. It was still in this safe area. There was a huge mountain rock with dozens of fist-sized stars embedded in it, giving off a gentle radiance. Yi Fan believed that these were real stars that had been refined and shrunk by someone. That was because he sensed a majestic aura suffocating him. What kind of heaven-defying method was this? He felt a chill in his heart. He had transformed dozens of stars to decorate this place and protect the mountain rock. People could only gasp in horror. As soon as Yi Fan and the others approached, the dozens of stars floated up and evolved into a small star field. Starlight shone brilliantly, and the mountain rock inside suddenly became infinitely far away as if it was standing on the other side of the universe. This was an ability that could only make people gasp in admiration. They retreated in fear of causing unnecessary trouble, and studied the words on the stone wall in the distance. "I'm about to die. Who can help me take care of my younger sister?" The person who carved the words seemed to have exhausted his vitality. The carvings were rough, and some parts were very blurry. There was a kind of feeling of despair and unfinished business. Vicious older brother, he really came here. Yi Fan said to himself. The stars rotated and a scene appeared. It was as if history was replayed, and the power of the stars reappeared in the world. A blurry figure appeared. He was mumbling to himself as if he couldn't let go of the other side of the starry sky. He stroked a devil mask with incomparable disappointment. Divine blood, demonic blood, and Buddhist blood have all been poured on its body. It will be my turn soon. It doesn't matter if I die, but who can help me take care of my younger sister? She is still too young, I can't feel at ease. The blurry figure implored the people beside him. If he could return to the other side of the starry sky, he asked them not to forget to help him raise his younger sister. Yi Fan was silent. This must have been Vicious who found this place after proving his Tao. He used a great divine ability to restore the scene of the past. This scene must have broken her heart. In the end, she plucked the stars and captured the moon. She refined a small star domain to protect these last words and thoughts. She left this giant stone behind forever, existing with the world. After passing this place, Yi Fan walked around the center of the immortal breeding ground. He thought seriously and began to carve on the ground, calculating with Genesis arts. Not long after, he was covered in sweat and his heart was cold. The Genesis arts of this place were beyond his understanding, even more so than the Yuan Taoist masters. This was a wonderful principle that seemed to be made by the heavens. Every piece of terrain was very particular, as if it was arranged by the heavens. However, he knew that the murderous intent was man-made. The danger created by the terrain was one thing, but the most troublesome thing was the Great Emperor Killing Formation. This place definitely had a complete and flawless Great Emperor Killing Formation. As long as it was triggered, one would definitely die. Yi Fan pondered for a long time, and found that he couldn't take a step forward. He could still deduce some origin divine arts, but he couldn't do anything about the Great Emperor Killing Formation. He had already come this far. It was really depressing to turn back. He paced around for a long time, but still couldn't come up with a solution. In the next half a month, he kept thinking and took out all the things he had on him to see which one could help him break the formation. Finally, Yi Fan stared at a certain item. It was left behind by Vicious and was once in the hands of the Emperor of Fighting. It was definitely a priceless treasure. Ever since Yi Fan obtained the Immortal Treasure Map, he had never used it. Later on, he asked a saint and guessed that it might be a star domain map. Because it was activated with great magic power, there were stars on it. Yi Fan couldn't figure it out. He didn't know how many nights he spent studying this map, but he didn't gain anything. However, at this time, a miraculous change happened to the map. This place emitted strands of immortal light and enveloped him. This is... Yi Fan was shocked. The Immortal Treasure Map was originally sparkling and translucent, as if it was cast from starlight. Now it was even more extraordinary. There were no changes on the front. Even after activating great magic power, there were only specks of stars. He couldn't understand it, but the back had changed. Komatsu's large eyes moved about. He also moved closer and looked at it curiously. He almost plunged his head in. Yi Fan quickly flipped through the ancient scroll. His heart pounded violently because he saw a complete mountain terrain map. This map overlapped with the Immortal Ascension diagram on the bone piece. The only difference was that there was one more corner. It was complete. Yi Fan was excited. He gripped this immortal treasure tightly, as if he was afraid it would fly away. Even the blood in his body was boiling. The secret map that Quasi-Emperor and the Great Sage fought over during the ancient times wasn't lost or incomplete. There was actually a complete one that had hope of entering the land of immortal ascension. There was actually such a shocking secret hidden within this ancient scroll that had existed since time immemorial. This is truly unexpected. Yi Fan's mind was stirred. He thought of many things at this moment. If his suspicions weren't wrong, then the 9 bone pieces were the patterns that were copied from this ancient scroll. This was the true original version. Turns out the complete and undamaged secret map has always been by my side. He was deeply moved. During these past few years, he used all of his power to seek help from the Central Earth's Taoist sects and Buddhism. He traveled to ancient places like India and Egypt to collect bone pieces, but in the end, he still couldn't piece the complete map together. Yet now there was such an unexpected turn of events. It was truly unexpected. It was as if he suddenly turned around and found that the person he was looking at was in the waning light. At the same time, Yi Fan keenly noticed a fact. The terrain map only took up a third of the back of the ancient scroll. It was as if there was another important ancient map that hadn't appeared. What is recorded in the other 2 areas? Could it be that they are more important than this land of immortal ascension? He couldn't help but be amazed. He looked carefully and discovered that there were 3 areas on the back. This was without a doubt. The other 2 areas had nothing to do with this terrain map. This is really precious. Yi Fan felt as if he was carrying an ancient star. There were 3 areas on the back alone. One of them was solved today and he knew how precious it was. It was the land of immortal ascension. Then what about the front? What value did it have? It was truly unimaginable. That's right. Yi Fan thought of many things. This was definitely something left behind by the ancient heaven. It was unknown how long it had been passed down. Some ancient emperors had obtained it and studied it seriously. The monkey once said that at the end of the primordial era, this map belonged to his father. The Emperor of Fighting often looked at this map late at night, and looked up at the starry sky. Then, after a long period of time, this ancient scroll fell into the hands of the Yuhua God dynasty. They copied the map onto the bone pieces. That was how they were able to send the hope of immortal ascension here to repair it. Later on, the Yuhua God dynasty turned into ashes overnight. This map fell into the hands of the ruthless great emperor. Only then did it appear in the chaotic nest of 10,000 dragons. All of this was connected. Yi Fan thought leisurely. Thinking about it, there must have been other saint emperors and great emperors who obtained this ancient scroll over the long years. It was just that no one knew about it. This map is as heavy as Mount Tai. Perhaps even the undying heavenly emperor studied it before. The heavenly prince once said that his father also wanted to establish a celestial court back then. But for some reason he didn't succeed in the end. At this point, Yi Fan could already confirm that this item was definitely an immortal treasure from the collapsed ancient heaven. It was a priceless treasure that was even heavier than the heavens. It's still fine now. If an ancient emperor-level character appeared, this map would definitely be lost. Only such a character would know how important it is. Yi Fan looked at it carefully and compared it seriously. He found a complicated path of life that could lead to the deepest part of the immortal realm. Chapter 1009. In the end, Yi Fan set off towards the depths of the land of ascension. Komatsu naturally followed in high spirits. It carried a small medicinal hoe in its hand, and prepared to harvest the ancient medicine king. Longma exhaled white smoke from its mouth and nose as it struggled internally. Yi Fan had already clearly told it that it could either follow in or leave on its own. He wouldn't make things difficult for it. It had already learned that this evil person, in front of it, had the immortal ascension diagram on him. He could enter the tens of thousands of dragon head peaks and pry into the secrets of ascension. It could be said that this was an irresistible temptation. Longma couldn't endure it any longer, and clenched its teeth in the end. Its entire body was covered in flames that were as red as blood. Its dragon scales flickered, and its slender and sturdy body arrived like a gust of wind. Yi Fan laughed loudly and directly sat on top of this divine steed Longma. It seemed to be forged from a mixture of scarlet multicolored light and divine gold. It was exceptionally powerful. The dragon horse's eyes were spitting fire, and it almost kicked Xiaosong off with its hind legs. However, it managed to endure it in the end. With a crunch, it bit off half of an ancient medicine that Xiaosong was fiddling with and swallowed it angrily. "That's mine." Komatsu mumbled timidly as it watched Longma eat this medicinal herb that was at least 50 to 60,000 years old. The land of ascension was extremely unordinary. It could be said that it transcended the secular world and shouldn't exist in time. There was no dirt or dust on the ground, and it flickered with a chalcedony luster. There wasn't a single weed in this place, and ordinary vines couldn't grow here. This was an ancient jade field, and only precious medicines could grow here. Its level was extremely high. After arriving at this place, Longma's mouth never stopped moving. It chewed on all kinds of old medicines as if they were grass. Spiritual essence overflowed in all directions, and brilliant lights and colors flowed about. Komatsu was extremely picky and searched everywhere for treasures. Up until now, its small medicine basket no longer contained ordinary spiritual fruits or ancient medicines that weren't at least 10,000 years old. It held a small medicinal hoe, and its large eyes continuously glanced at Dragon Head Peak. It had long identified the true medicine king, and was preparing to dig up a few stalks. Yi Fan walked very carefully. If he took the wrong path here, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. Once the Great Emperor Killing Formation was activated, even the Quasi-Emperor would die without a burial. The more he walked in, the more reverence he felt. Not to mention the Varch Formation, just the origin heaven's laws were beyond his understanding. This place definitely had rules laid down by a Genesis god. Even if you break the killing formation of the ancient emperors, there's still the heaven origin forbidden formation. The two fused together to form the immortal slaying diagram. He held the ancient scroll in his hand and carefully compared it. He walked very slowly, because as long as he deviated even the slightest bit, he would never be able to make a comeback. There was only a narrow path that could be taken. It was winding and extremely complicated. Suddenly, his expression became serious. Within a stone forest, he actually saw a person sitting cross-legged on top of a piece of green jade. This person had a dignified appearance and was surrounded by immortal energy. There were strands of terrifying aura being emitted from his body. It was incomparably terrifying, and each strand was as heavy as 10,000 caddies. It was as if a demonic mountain was pressing down. The Longma let out a low neigh. Flames flickered under its 4 hooves and raging flames surged. Its entire body shot out scarlet multicolored light and dragon energy surged. The horse's mane stood up and its scales trembled. Komatsu was even more afraid. It grabbed onto a corner of Yi Fan's clothes and didn't dare to make a sound. That kind of aura was difficult to resist. Yi Fan took out the cauldron. 10,000 layers of source energy fell down and protected them within. He was exceptionally shocked. There was actually such a peerless character in the immortal Ascension land. He definitely couldn't be defeated. This person's Taoist robe was old, and there was a wooden hairpin in his gray hair. He was motionless and was surrounded by the faint mist that seeped out from the immortal incubation land. The scene was astonishing. Great Sage. This was a human race supreme expert. Yi Fan immediately determined that this person was a great sage. He had previously sensed this kind of aura from the archaic imperial race's great sage Hunchuo's body. The immortal Ascension land was the most terrifying life-restricted area. No one could pass through and see, so why was there a person guarding this place? Yi Fan was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. Senior. He softly called out. Suddenly seeing an existence of this level made him feel a bit lacking in confidence. The person in front of him didn't react at all. He sat cross-legged on the several zhonglong green jade stone like a clay statue. Only immortal light surged out. Something's not right. Even though there is a powerful life force, there are no fluctuations of divine sense. This person should be dead. Yi Fan quickly came to this conclusion. His expression trembled and he opened his heavenly eye. His heart was filled with shock. This was a human race's great sage. Could it be that he died here just like that? He carefully observed this person. This person's flesh was undamaged, and there was even luster. Immortal energy flowed in and out of his pores, as if he was breathing in and out. However, his eyes were tightly closed, and his primordial spirit was empty. Yi Fan was stupefied. This person should have died. Even though his flesh was intact, he didn't have a soul, so he couldn't be said to still be alive. This wasn't a natural death, or else he should have already transformed into the Tao. This was a dead archaic great sage. His flesh didn't wither and was preserved. It really is strange. It is vivid and lifelike, as if it was alive. What a pity that even someone like this died in the formation. Yi Fan became even more cautious. He didn't even charge through a great sage. If he accidentally entered, one could well imagine how terrifying it would be. He opened his heavenly eye, discovering that there was a divine lamp in this great sage's body. It was bright and undying even now, full of life force. It was the lamp that was taking in and sending out immortal light, making the corpse seem as if it still had life. The great sage's supreme treasure. Yi Fan was shocked. This was definitely a treasure. It was only a few zhang away from him, yet it made him sigh as he gazed at it. He couldn't walk over at all. There was only a winding path that was safe here. If he took a single step inside by mistake, he would die. This great sage was the best lesson. He was killed here for no reason. Yi Fan tried to operate the army symbol formula. He didn't dare act recklessly, only trying to lift up a speck of dust that was pressed against the safe line. As a result, the winds and clouds changed in that instant. Heaven and earth lost color. There was a mortal killing power interweaving in the void, shattering that speck of dust, making that strand of divine will feel a wave of intense pain. He quickly severed the karma. He was overwhelmed with shock. This place was extraordinary after all. He couldn't act recklessly, or else he wouldn't even know how he died. They continued forward, turning left and right, entering a hilly region. Yi Fan felt waves of blood fiendish energy, as if it could slice off one's skin and flesh, cleave apart one's bones. After advancing for some distance, he saw a glaring red, and a wave of blood energy was rising. It was very far from this safe path, but it was still enough to make one's hair stand on end. Another great sage died here. Yi Fan opened his heavenly eye. There was a corpse in front of a hill, and it was much more miserable than the one whose primordial spirit had been emptied. This great sage was badly mutilated, suffering the pain of the fire essence burning his body. Of course, he was already dead, so he couldn't feel this kind of pain. However, it was truly miserable. Half of his body had been burned dry, and blood energy was rising. Yi Fan was greatly moved. This wasn't caused by the great emperor killing formation, but by an unimaginable origin heaven-forbidden technique that surpassed everything he had learned. It borrowed the power of 10,000 dragon head peaks to interweave into a fire source of creation that could kill all life. Could it be that there was a saint emperor who used origin heaven-forbidden technique to prove his Tao, and he served the ancient heaven? Yi Fan was puzzled, because no matter how he looked, he felt that the origin heaven-forbidden technique formation in this place wasn't any weaker than the great emperor killing formation. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a double defense. Moreover, the 10,000 dragon head peaks that were pregnant with immortals were most likely created by this person. Yi Fan advanced for a very long distance, and along the way, he found a total of 3 great sage dead here. The third person only had a piece of bone, and a drop of blood left. In ancient times, even the sages from the outer realms rushed here. I don't know which ancient star these 3 people came from, but there's no way to bury their corpses. Yi Fan sighed. He couldn't help, and he couldn't go forward. Otherwise, the weapons left behind by these people would be enough to make people go crazy. Finally, they approached the immortal pregnant valley that was surrounded by 10,000 dragon head peaks, and it was also at this moment that Yi Fan felt a bone-piercing killing intent. Even with the myriad chi cauldron protecting his body, he still felt chills. Longma stopped advancing because his body bulged. His tendons and veins swelled as if they were about to burst open, and his whole body was spasming. Komatsu was hiding on Yi Fan's shoulder, and it was even more unbearable. After all, compared to them, his cultivation was still very low, and he let out a mournful cry. Fortunately, Yi Fan always paid attention to his safety, and he had already wrapped most of his origin chi around him, so no accidents happened. Boom! Yi Fan propped up a light screen, and golden blood chi permeated from his whole body, protecting Komatsu and Longma. In the current world, there was hardly anyone who could compare to his physical body, and it could block the killing intent. At the same time, he activated the myriad chi cauldron, and let it recover. The origin chi root immediately fell down like a waterfall, isolating it from the outside world, and blocking the killing intent. Longma let out a long sigh, and continued forward. Meanwhile, Komatsu also hit on his shoulder, and he lightly patted his chest, looking like he had lingering fear. Suddenly Yi Fan's expression froze. He saw a broken corpse in the midst of a stone mountain, and the great killing intent was coming from the flesh and lustrous white bones. A quasi-emperor. Yi Fan's mind was shaken, and the blood in his body rumbled. He sped up, and it was as if thunder was shaking the 9 heavens. His heart trembled. Over 100 pure white bones and bright red and glaring blood were all flickering. That person had been chopped into pieces by the killing formation of the great ancient emperor. The quasi-emperor's methods were exceedingly high, and he could compete with the heaven and earth for fortune. How many people were there since ancient times? It could be said that he was an existence that shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries, but he had died here just like that. This kind of blood chi killing intent was already difficult to endure, and if it was any other Dao-severing expert, their bodies would definitely crack apart. Only Yi Fan could resist this kind of terrifying bloodline power. It has been 10 or 20,000 years since he died, and he still has this kind of power. It is truly inconceivable. Yi Fan exclaimed in surprise. He didn't know which ancient star this person came from, and why he died here in the end. Even if there was no ancient killing formation to obstruct him, he still had no way to go over, because this person's corpse was covered in blood, and the quasi-emperor's aura was overwhelming. He would be turned into a bloody pulp before he could reach his side. A centipede died, but it didn't fall down. As a quasi-emperor, he was even more terrifying. Even though he was dead, he still couldn't be compared to an ordinary person. The land of immortality is truly an inconceivable place. 3 great sage and a quasi-emperor died here. Yi Fan could only sigh like this. Seeing that the power of the quasi-emperor's bloodline was so terrifying, he couldn't help but think of some past events. If the heart of the demon emperor had a killing intent, how powerful would it be? It was simply unimaginable. If it wasn't for the Green Emperor dispelling the killing intent in his blood, the entire world would have collapsed when that heart emerged from the Yin tomb. At that time he had just embarked on the path of cultivation and didn't know much about this, so he didn't know how terrifying it was. Later, when he heard Yin Ryu and the Crimson Dragon Taoist talk about it, he felt incomparably horrified. That was the precious medicine of the Emperor's blood that the Green Emperor left behind for his descendants, and it had already dispelled the killing intent. Otherwise, once it appeared, no one would be able to approach it, and there would be a great killing calamity. Any living creature that touched it would die. It was the same as the divine blood obtained by the Vatican's Holy Knight. According to the Holy Knight, the so-called divine blood should be the blood essence left behind by an ancient holy emperor, and it had been refined by generations of sages to dispel the killing intent. He accidentally spilled it and bathed in it, which was why he didn't die. Since then his physical body was indestructible and powerful to the extreme. Suddenly, Komatsu threw away the little medicine hoe and stared blankly ahead. He revealed a strange expression and gently shook Yi Fan, asking him to turn around and look. Yi Fan withdrew his gaze from the corpse of the quasi-emperor and looked forward. He was startled at first, then shocked to the extreme. He simply couldn't believe his own eyes. Is this real? Longma, who was below him, also knew what it was and almost went crazy. Its 4 hooves stomped on the ground, almost flipping Yi Fan over. It wanted to rush over directly. This item was too precious, and even the ancient emperors were shocked. Chapter 1010. There was a half-meter-tall purple pagoda that quietly rested there. It was as if it had fallen from the blue heavens, ancient and imposing, flowing with an indescribable aura. Longma knew what it was, rushing forward fiercely. It had seen the ancient scroll in Yi Fan's hands, discovering that this artifact was resting on the safe path, not dangerous. Yi Fan felt like this wasn't real. This large piece of immortal material really was too unreal, simply like a dream, hard to believe. This is divine mark purple gold. Even his voice was trembling. Phoenix blood scarlet gold, dragon marked black gold, immortal tears green gold. He had seen all of them before, all of them the most well-known immortal materials. This was the first time he saw this type of divine treasure. Its entire body was sparkling like a purple diamond, releasing a dreamlike radiance. It was called divine mark purple gold. Longma ran crazily, releasing draconic energy from its mouth, moving as fast as lightning. It was still quite far away, opening its mouth to suck it in, wishing to make it its own. However, after trying a bit, it didn't succeed. Moreover, at this moment, it sensed a type of dense killing intent, its primordial spirit feeling like it was going to be destroyed. Its entire body contorted, quickly stopping its steps. At this time, only Komatsu could still be considered calm. It blinked its large eyes, a bit confused. Even though it felt like this artifact was extraordinary, it didn't recognize it. Don't act rashly. Yi Fan shouted to stop Longma. This piece of immortal material was half a meter tall without any other impurities. This was just too shocking, its value immeasurable. Even the great ancient emperor's hearts were jumping. A fist-sized piece of phoenix blood scarlet gold was already enough to shock the world, making everyone go crazy. Now such a large piece. Divine mark purple gold was forged into a pagoda, so one could imagine just how heaven-defying the magical force of the owner was. This artifact was definitely dangerous. If one acted rashly, there might be a great disaster. Is it an extreme Tao Emperor weapon? Yi Fan's heart was pounding. He couldn't be sure, because there were all types of killing formations in the place of immortal ascension that could conceal all auras, making it difficult to judge. How could this type of immortal material be thrown here? No matter how great one's background was, they still couldn't afford to squander it. It shouldn't be like this. Finally, they cautiously approached. An astonishing killing intent overflowed, slashing one's primordial spirit. Longma could no longer approach. Yifan dismounted from his horse and walked forward step by step. Finally, he saw the source of the danger. The other side of the purple pagoda was stained with a few bloodstains. They were bright red and glaring, brimming with murderous intent. He couldn't help but be startled and didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. He gazed at the quasi-emperor's corpse that was scattered in the distance. The fresh blood was glistening, and the aura was the same. It should be from the same source. The divine blood of quasi-emperor. This tower is his. Yifan's eyes flickered with light. Just how great of good luck was needed to obtain such a large piece of immortal material. Moreover, it was even successfully forged into an artifact embryo. It was truly shocking. It's a material that even the great ancient emperors would find difficult to obtain, but he has such a big piece. His future should be bright, and he should be walking towards the glorious peak of Tao confirming. Yifan muttered to himself. This person's good luck was heaven-defying. He could be said to be the main character of an era. Yet in the end, it was precisely this type of endlessly blessed quasi-emperor that died miserably here. The will of the heavens is hard to fathom. A person with immeasurable prospects was killed just like that. Yifan had reason to believe that this person was a heaven-defying figure from an ancient star. If nothing unexpected happened, he could prove his Tao and become an emperor. However, the path of immortality was rough and bumpy. Even if one was an exceptional talent, they could still turn into bones. This also proved how terrifying this land of immortal ascension was. Even a quasi-emperor like this who possessed great natural luck suffered a great disaster. He couldn't defy the heavens here, and the so-called heavenly fate was completely stripped away. This made him shiver inwardly. He didn't dare to act carelessly anymore. Every step was done carefully and cautiously. Yifan backed up. When he was far enough away, he used the army symbol formula to peel off the drops of quasi-emperor's blood. He temporarily placed them to the side, and then he moved the purple pagoda over. This is truly a great natural luck. This is an extreme Tao origin embryo. After observing it for a long time, he already confirmed that this weapon was only a rough embryo. There weren't any Tao marks or natural laws engraved on it. This meant that the quasi-emperor hadn't obtained it long ago. The half-meter-tall purple pagoda emitted an aura that had experienced the vicissitudes of time. It was as if a blue sky had fallen here, and all types of immortal light lingered about. The most abundant thing in this land of immortal ascension was the nourishment of immortal energy. This rough embryo couldn't be damaged in the slightest and could only gradually develop spirituality. The pagoda's body was thick, and every inch was sparkling and translucent. Purple light flickered about, and it was as brilliant as a purple diamond. There were lines of patterns on its surface, as if they were carefully carved by a deity. This was the so-called divine marks, also known as the tangible embodiment of the Tao. This was also the reason for its name. Komatsu blinked his large eyes and curiously sized it up. He felt that it was a bit strange because this divine mark purple gold was just like him. Its entire body was dazzling with purple multicolored light, and even its spirituality was similar. Longma didn't hold back at all. He opened his mouth and wanted to swallow it. Any creature with spirituality would want to obtain such a heaven-defying object. This was an artifact of Tao verification. Yifan pushed it to the side and said, "This was discovered by Komatsu." He carefully examined this artifact and confirmed that there was no danger in this pagoda. There really weren't any Tao marks engraved on it, and it was just an ownerless rough embryo. Only then did he relax. Komatsu moved closer and raised his head to look at the purple pagoda. It was a lot taller than him, and it was all glistening with purple light. The two contrasted beautifully, making it scratch its head. It used all its strength to move the pagoda, but in the end, it was so tired that it was drenched in sweat. It sat down on the ground with an embarrassed expression. It actually couldn't move it at all. Longma was disdainful. It went up to take advantage of the situation, and wanted to take it for itself. In the end, it was also shocked. This pagoda was terrifyingly heavy, and it was at least 1,000,000 jin in weight. This was a supreme immortal material. Even though it was a rough embryo, it was still world-shocking. With Yifan's help, Komatsu lifted the purple pagoda with difficulty. However, with a smacking sound, it locked itself inside and couldn't come out anymore. Yifan smiled. He picked up this treasure that could shake the entire star domain and released it. I'll help you store it in the silver bell. You can refine it with your mind every day, and when you become stronger, you'll be able to use it. He took out the small stone Buddha from the bell and carefully carved a complex spatial formation. He then stored the divine purple golden pagoda inside and handed it to Komatsu. Perhaps one day, I will leave this ancient star and head for another star domain. That place is filled with blood and battles. It is too difficult and dangerous. I want to leave you here. You can cultivate in seclusion here. This will be your Tao-proving artifact. Komatsu was immediately terrified after hearing these words. Its eyes were filled with tears as it stuffed the rough embryo into Yifan's hands. It begged him not to leave, and even if he had to leave, he had to bring it along. It's still too early to talk about this. I don't know how to go back. Yifan lovingly rubbed its head, and then looked at the sky. There would definitely be a war in the future in another star domain. The short-term peace wouldn't last long. All races believed that the path to becoming a celestial was about to open. In order to compete for the opportunity that had been waiting for ages, there would be a bloody battle between the peerless figures. Although Longma wasn't convinced, it couldn't do anything about it. The divine purple golden pagoda was discovered by Komatsu and obtained by Yifan. It indeed had no reason to keep it for itself. The earth is an extraordinary place. If you can verify your Tao here in the future, you'll have unimaginable results. Yifan helped it keep the bell, and told it not to use the small stone Buddha anymore. From now on, it should only entrust its mind to the purple pagoda. He already had the cauldron of myriad qi. Although this pagoda was a divine treasure, it was meaningless to him. Yifan used his omnipotent means to seal a few drops of Quasi-Emperor's precious blood into the cauldron. In a sense, this was divine blood. It could be used to refine saintly medicine and would be of great use. They continued on their journey. Yifan taught Komatsu how to refine a tool to prove Tao. He had many experiences to pass on to it before they left. What made him speechless was that he saw the profound meaning of one tool to break all techniques in the little thing's mind. It was actually preparing to reforge the purple pagoda into a pine pagoda. The spherical fruits of pine trees were called pine pagoda because they looked like pagoda. In the little purple thing's mind, it felt that since it was going to reforge a pagoda, it must be more realistic. A natural pine pagoda was the most suitable. Do you think pine nuts are the most delicious? Yifan asked it. Yes, it answered subconsciously. Then it was immediately embarrassed. Alright, pine pagoda, it's pine pagoda. Whether it's the name or the shape, it suits you. Yifan could only say this. They continued on their journey. Yifan said to himself, there are a few types of divine metals in this world. Phoenix blood gold, immortal tears green gold. Legend has it that if they are cast together, they can become another supreme material. Unfortunately, no one has succeeded since ancient times. Komatsu immediately opened its mouth and said childishly, in the future, it would find all kinds of divine metals for its master. It would mix them with the myriad qi and forge them into the world's #1 weapon. Yifan rubbed its head and didn't say anything. It was enough to have the myriad qi's origin root. As for those legends, they were too vague and might not necessarily be true. Finally, they arrived at Dragon Head Peak. They ascended a mountain path. Tens of thousands of dragon-headed peaks stood side by side, surrounding an immortal valley. The spiritual energy was dense and multicolored light shone in millions and millions of strands. It made this place especially sacred. They had truly entered the land of immortal ascension. This was an unparalleled, wondrous land. It had the profound secret of stealing the creation of the world, and could give birth to immortals. Every dragon peak shone with tens of thousands of rays of immortal light, and thousands of auspicious colors. They were divine and sacred. The treasured medicines growing on them were at least 20,000 years old, and their fragrance assailed the nostrils. Yifan advanced along the mountain path. Komatsu was very happy. It found 2 king medicines on the safe path. Both were more than 90,000 years old. It carefully dug them out. The ancient medicine was a meter tall. For it was like a precious tree, flickering with multicolored light. It needed to raise it up. It was in high spirits, offering one stalk to Yi Fan out of respect. Then it gave the other stalk to the dragon horse out of goodwill. This kind of thing could extend one's lifespan. It was a priceless treasure even in Big Dipper. It would make saints bow to it. The divine chariot naturally accepted it. However, it didn't swallow it immediately. It knew how rare the king medicines were. It would slowly refine them in the future. The path was winding, but it was the only way out. One wrong step would lead to death. Yi Fan and the others took a detour. They passed many dragon head peaks and entered the valley. During this process, Komatsu was the happiest. It had harvested a total of 8 king medicines, all of which grew on the path. It was very happy with its little hoe. You can keep them. No need to send me off, Yi Fan said. Every time it dug up a medicine, it would give it to its master. However, Yi Fan secretly placed them into its pine tower. In the future, he would leave. Komatsu would cultivate alone on this ancient planet, so it would definitely need these things. Finally, they entered the hinterland. When they reached the depths of the valley, they finally saw the magnificent scene. Tens of thousands of dragon head peaks poured down a waterfall of immortal light. It was so thick that it had turned into liquid. It gathered at the center of the valley, where there was a large celestial pond. Celestial energy rose and millions of rays of light shone. It was dazzling and covered most of the valley. The hope of becoming an immortal is bred in this celestial pond. Yi Fan's eyes shone with divine light. In the valley, clouds were rising. There had never been a place like this. The treasured medicines were everywhere, making people go crazy. If they could collect all of them, it would be unimaginable. At the same time, a special fragrance assailed their nostrils. It was extraordinary and extraordinary. Yi Fan was shocked. There was definitely an immortal divine medicine here. Chapter 10-11. The land of immortal ascension was a mysterious place. Since ancient times, countless heroes had wanted to come here to see what was going on. But almost all of them had died with regrets. Tens of thousands of mountains stood side by side, forming a valley. Each dragon head peak opened its mouth and poured down a colorful waterfall. Immortal light surged and gathered at the center of the immortal pond. What's in the pond? Yi Fan could not see clearly. The divine light in the pond was so dazzling that he could not see through it even with his heavenly eye open. Immortal chi lingered in the valley, and auspicious lights flickered. All kinds of immortal splendor flowed about, forming a magnificent scene of immortals. Even Longma could not help but feel excited. Its 4 hooves stomped the ground, unable to calm down. It wanted nothing more than to rush over immediately. It was born in Kunlun and naturally knew about the land of immortal ascension, but it had never had the chance to enter. Yi Fan's expression was excited. He grabbed the ancient scroll with one hand and clenched his fist with the other. He had finally entered, and was about to reveal the eternal mystery. At this time, the calmest was still Komatsu. It did not think too much. The immortal pond only piqued its curiosity, and was not as practical as the Medicine King. The little purple thing was even more tempted. A pure heart was the rarest, and this was also the reason why its cultivation could improve so quickly. Let's go. Yi Fan jumped off Longma and personally led the way. This place was very important and would determine whether he could become an immortal in the future. The murderous intent here was even stronger. Even if it was not activated, it would still make one's heart palpitate. This was under the condition that the immortal mist had concealed most of the murderous intent. One could clearly see that there were lines of intricate patterns in the air. They interweaved to form the orbit of a star field and covered every corner. One could imagine that once they were activated, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. It was impossible to fly in this land of immortal ascension. Only immortal grass could grow on the ground. This was definitely the Origin Emperor's method. Even though the killing formations were densely packed, they still provided a pure land for the divine medicine to live in. Their roots have merged with the laws here. Only by obtaining its approval can they survive here. Yi Fan muttered to himself. Immediately after, he shivered. The laws and killing arrays in this place were so powerful that they made one's heart skip a beat. The formation god that the Black Emperor had mentioned must have already been born. That's right, that must be it. His pupils rapidly contracted, and he became even more convinced after a closer look. Back then, the person who set up the formation was extremely skilled and allowed the formation to evolve the will of a deity. It gained life and turned into a living being that was formed from interweaving Tao marks. Only by bringing this immortal treasure could one enter the formation. This was no longer just a safe path map, it had also become a type of keepsake. Otherwise, even if one understood the operation and layout of the formation, they would most likely die. The methods of the ancient emperors were unpredictable. They could turn the formation into a living spirit, and the formation itself could change freely. The Black Emperor had said that this was the highest realm of Tao patterns and formations. The birth of a god within the formation was only a heaven-defying performance of the ancient emperors. It was equivalent to the continuation of their lives. The terrain in the valley was uneven, and there was not a single speck of dust. There were jade-like medicinal fields everywhere. The people back then had already predicted that this place would definitely give birth to precious medicines, and even immortal divine medicines, which would make the celestial pond even more holy. Among these ancient medicines, Yi Fan had discovered who knew how many stalks of Medicine King. His heart trembled violently. If all of these were put together, they would be even more precious than divine medicines. Unfortunately, he could only be envious. Apart from those he met on the path, he couldn't act rashly even if the others were right in front of him, and within reach. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer a great calamity. Longma swallowed and spat out immortal light. His eyes were about to pop out, and Komatsu also couldn't move. From time to time, a Medicine King would appear, and he could obtain it just by leaning over. This was a great temptation. It was like a demonic fruit polished from red agate. It was sparkling and glistening, and its fragrance assailed the nostrils. It was like an immortal orchid carved from jade. It was emerald green and tender, and its entire body was translucent. Its fragrance assailed the senses. The cloud vines entwined with green multicolored clouds were misty, and the fragrance seeped into the heart. There were countless types of ancient medicines of different grades. It was as if they had accidentally barged into an immortal's medicine garden. There were precious treasures everywhere. Every stalk of ancient medicine was overflowing with brilliant colors, dazzling and dazzling. There were even more withered and dead Medicine Kings that had lost their luster and collapsed on the ground. The spiritual essence they released nourished this place. Because too much time had passed, Medicine Kings weren't immortal divine medicines. It wasn't easy for them to grow to 80 or 90,000 years old any longer, and they would turn into mud and decline. It was unknown how many generations the immortal vine divine orchids had existed here. The current Medicine Kings were all born from the medicinal seeds that had once again sprouted and taken root. They had flourished for tens of thousands of generations, withered and flourished again. Yi Fan and the others continued forward. On this relatively safe and winding path, Komatsu dug up a total of 11 stalks of Medicine Kings. This was an extremely great harvest. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely leave everyone stupefied. They were finally close and about to reach the immortal pond. It was also at this time that Yi Fan saw a grave. It was extremely strange. It was located right at the side of the road, cutting off the formation within the immortal valley. He couldn't help but be shocked. Just how high of a cultivation did one have to be to dare to wantonly destroy a great emperor's killing formation that was born with the will of a deity and create a grave? His methods were truly heaven-defying. Yi Fan opened his heavenly eye and looked into the grave. He saw dozens of fragments that were pieced together to form a devil mask. It was accompanied by bloody clothes, causing his expression to tremble. The devil mask that was full of cracks seemed to be crying yet not crying, smiling yet not smiling. There was sadness within the smile, and there was also a smile within the wound. It was exactly the same as the marks on the heaven-devouring evil jar. It's him, he died here. It was definitely that youth. After parting with the vicious great emperor, they never met again. Life and death were boundless, and his corpse lay in the land of immortal ascension. He was unable to break free from his predetermined fate. I was just worried about my younger sister. Within the grave, from the broken devil mask, there was actually such a weak voice that carried regret, unwillingness, and pleading. It was as if it had crossed through the ages to arrive. Even though this mask was made of ordinary copper and the workmanship was crude, It had a type of indescribable charm. It made one's heart palpitate as it lay within the grave. Yi Fan sighed. The vicious great emperor used a heaven-defying forbidden divine technique to reconstruct some of the scenes she wanted to know, allowing the youth's final words to continue. Not to become an immortal, just to wait for you to return from this mortal world. A woman's voice seemed to come from above the 9 heavens, causing all the deities to tremble uncontrollably. In the heavens above and earth below, only she reigned supreme, choosing a path that the world couldn't understand. Yi Fan, Komatsu, and Longma quivered. A woman who looked down on the ages, overlooking the past, present, and future. A single sentence from her would last through the ages. There was no monument erected in front of this grave, and no traces of the Tao could be seen either. However, it traversed through the formation and existed eternally. It couldn't be denied that this was a type of miracle. In a trance, Yi Fan saw a little girl who was no more than 2 or 3 years old. Her figure was very blurry, and her hair was combed into a pair of sheep horn braids. Her face couldn't be seen clearly, only a pair of pure big eyes filled with tears as she cried pitifully. Her clothes were patched up, and she wore a pair of small shoes that revealed her toes. She helplessly reached out her little hands, trying to grab onto something. He shook his head forcefully. The grave was still a grave, and there was nothing else except for the bloody clothes and pieces of the mask. Yi Fan stopped for a moment before turning around to leave. His heart was filled with sorrow. The vicious great emperor's name had shaken the ages, and his talent was number 1. He had created all kinds of peerless techniques, yet he met with such misfortune. Even though he stood above the 9 heavens and made all the deities tremble, it was difficult to change his ending. Even though Longma had a fiery temper, he was still well-behaved in this place. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he followed closely behind. The ancient scroll was unfurled, and Yi Fan compared it to the topographic map. They passed through an area that not many people had been able to reach, and they approached the celestial pond at the very center. Rays of multicolored light flew over, illuminating their entire bodies. This was an intoxicating place. Auspicious light overflowed and propitious energy was in the tens of thousands. It was difficult to find a second place like this in the entire world. If one could cultivate here for a long time, they would definitely reap great benefits. However, no one dared to stay here for a long time to comprehend techniques. If they were to trigger the great Tao and fuse it with this ancient spell formation, they would have to face the consequences. Whoosh! An ancient medicine in the medicine field flashed and disappeared, leaving behind a fragrant scent that made one's bones feel intoxicated. The mist of light entered their bodies. Yi Fan, Longma, and Komatsu felt as if they were about to ascend to the heavens. Their entire bodies felt comfortable, and even their joints were creaking. The elixir of immortality. There was a type of divine medicine in the celestial valley that could fly on its own. The deities born from the spell formation did not harm it, and it hid into the distance. As expected of the celestial realm, they even have an immortal medicine. Yi Fan exclaimed. The Yangxiang clan had already obtained one, and there was actually another here. However, it was not surprising that a place where immortals were born would produce such a divine medicine. He remembered the Polygonum Multiflorum's words, so he stopped here and transmitted his voice into the distance. He said that there would be a great calamity in this place, and he asked the immortal medicine if it was willing to leave with him. Longma rolled his eyes at the side. How could a person be so shameless? He wanted to capture the immortal medicine, and yet he acted so pompously, as if it was for its own good. However, contrary to Longma's expectations, the divine medicine really did respond positively. It used its weak divine sense to transmit a message, telling Yi Fan that if he took away the hope of becoming an immortal, the calamity here would be resolved on its own. However, if he could not take it away, then it would leave with him. Multicolored light flowed, and mist filled the air. Yi Fan was speechless. He did not see the true body of the divine medicine, and it was obvious that he had to make a choice between the two. He really did not know what to do with the immortal medicine. Yi Fan could only choose to continue on his way. Although the immortal medicine was hard to find in this world, and an ancient star with life might not even produce one, it was not impossible to find one. Moreover, the hope of becoming an immortal was the only one since ancient times. The rest of the journey was smooth, and they walked all the way to the celestial pond. Along the way, Komatsu dug up a total of 17 king medicines. If this news was spread to any star region, it would be shocking and unbelievable. This was a miracle. This is the celestial pond that nurtures the hope of becoming an immortal. Yifan's voice trembled. They had finally arrived, and even he could not suppress his excitement. This eternal mystery was finally going to be revealed. Longma's entire body was covered in flames. Its large head forcefully bumped Yifan, and it wanted nothing more than to jump into the celestial pond. Only Komatsu was very quiet. He carried the small medicine basket on his back and stood at Yifan's side, curiously sizing him up. Yifan was shocked. He carefully observed and discovered that this land of immortality was actually like a placenta. It was smashed by a palm and turned into a pond. Who did this? His expression immediately changed. Could it be that the hope of becoming an immortal was taken away by someone, or perhaps it was destroyed? However, that was not right. Just now, the divine medicine had already said that the hope of becoming an immortal was still here. It was done by a vicious person. When Yifan thought of this result, he couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. This great empress was extraordinary after all. It really was as she said, she did not want to become an immortal. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of innate essence energy. He wanted to disperse the thousands of strands of multicolored light that shot out from the celestial pond. It was because this place was too resplendent, making it difficult to open one's eyes. The immortal light was cut open. He opened his heavenly eye and gazed into the pond, and his mind was immediately shaken. He saw an artifact, and the hope of becoming an immortal still existed at the bottom of the pond. Chapter 10:12. The immortal pond was about 10 feet long and half a foot wide. It was unknown what material it was made of, but multicolored light shone from within. The essence of heaven and earth was so thick that it couldn't be dispersed. It became liquid and gathered in the pond. Yifan opened his heavenly eyes and his expression froze on the spot. He saw the hope of becoming an immortal. His expression changed and he didn't say anything for a long time. It's this. This was a bronze artifact. It was dark and lusterless as it quietly sank to the bottom of the pond. There were all kinds of patterns engraved on it. There were birds, beasts, fish, insects, the sun, moon, and stars, but they were all blurry. This was a cauldron. It wasn't complete and was badly damaged. There was less than a third of the original artifact left. The 3 legs were still there, but the circular cauldron walls were almost gone. There was even a large hole at the bottom of the cauldron. Green cauldron. It's this. Yifan's eyes shone brightly. If this cauldron was intact, it would be at least a meter tall. It was simple and natural, and its entire body was modeled with imprints. It was made of the same material as the 2 pieces of green copper on him. Yifan was stunned for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't think of this possibility. Before entering the land of immortal ascension, he had speculated about it, and thought of all kinds of possibilities. But when he saw it with his own eyes, he was still stunned. The hope of becoming an immortal is actually this. He muttered to himself, his heart incomparably shocked. He finally saw the true body. The thing that carried the hopes of countless people from past to present was now right in front of him. Yifan's emotions were quite complicated. He had searched for it with a narrow escape. Countless heroes from past to present had chased after it across the starry sky. And one day, he would see the main body. This made him feel as if it was unreal. Yes, the one that the Yuhua God dynasty is supposed to be escorting is this. In the Big Dipper star region, there were ancient records that the Yuhua God dynasty ruled the world more than 200,000 years ago. They once had a green cauldron. After many years, the Central Plains ancestral temple appeared and all kinds of secrets were spread out. All the heroes of the world, including the ancient races, were alarmed. They all flocked over to fight for the supreme treasure. Among them, the various ancient royal families went specifically for this green cauldron. It was because it was too important and all races wanted it. When Yifan left, a storm gathered in Central Continent's ancestral temple. All of the world's heroes rose up together. A great battle was going to take place, and the main reason was precisely to fight over this ancient cauldron. With so many heroes appearing, even the primordial king couldn't remain calm. Even the great sage Hunchuo personally arrived. No matter what, none of them would have expected that the green cauldron wasn't in Central Continent's ancestral temple, but rather on this side of the starry sky. It had already been placed here more than 200,000 years ago, undergoing restoration. No wonder the two pieces of copper shook a little when I returned to Earth several years ago, Yi Fan said to himself. He had such a real feeling at that time. When he descended from the outer realms, apart from seeing many towering mountains, the strangest thing was that the green copper had trembled, which made him feel strange. Yi Fan's eyes shone brightly as he stared at the bottom of the immortal pond. This was an immortal cauldron that had existed for tens of thousands of years, the heaviest since the ancient times. Its true value simply couldn't be measured. Just the opportunity to become an immortal was enough to make people go crazy. Even the great ancient emperors would take action for it. Once news of this got out, the vast starry sky would find it hard to calm down. Great battles would break out because of it. Endless years, endless starry sky, how many prosperity and decline. How much decay and prosperity, from one ancient star to another. Yi Fan let out a long sigh. All of this was too mysterious and dreamy. Since the ancient times, how many heroes were involved in this? There were too many secrets hidden within. And it was filled with blood, bones, and tears. This land of immortal incubation originated from ancient times, at least several million years ago. It involved the primordial emperor and the great emperor. But even more secrets couldn't be explained clearly no matter what. Yi Fan pondered. He could sort out some clues, but if he wanted to truly trace back to the source and sort out the various ancient eras, it was simply impossible. At the beginning, it should have originated from the celestial court. This era was extremely ancient, and it should be before the archaic era, or even more ancient. They were the ones who designed everything. I don't know if there were immortals in the ancient heaven, but they firmly believed that immortals could be born this way. So they laid down a grand blueprint. The ancient heaven was incomparably powerful. The fact that it could control the 99 dragon mountains to descend from one ancient star to another was enough to explain the problem. It didn't hesitate to destroy many sources of life. Among them, there were even a few other ancient emperors. This was because Yi Fan had discovered from the layout of the 99 dragon mountains and the layout of the land of immortal ascension in Kunlun, that there should have been an origin emperor. He deduced from this that the period was extremely prosperous, and the great emperors could coexist and meet. It was also because of this that the celestial court was supreme and powerful. Yi Fan had reason to believe that the origin emperor could move the sun, moon, stars, and mountains. He should have been one of the main architects of the grand blueprint, and had invested a great deal of effort into it. Unfortunately, their plan was too long, and many of them couldn't wait for the results. During this period, the venerable emperor died, the gods of the various regions fell into chaos, the celestial court collapsed, and the celestial cauldron was obtained by the victor. It was just that it was unknown whether the person who obtained the cauldron had become an immortal. This was because that period of time was too ancient, and there was no way to judge it. Even the ancient books didn't record it. However, one could imagine that it was a magnificent period. Many world-shaking battles must have taken place, and many glorious events must have taken place. After that, the major events that followed could be interpreted through the peerless characters of each period. From what the monkey and the heavenly prince had said, as well as the secrets spread by the ancient races, it could be seen that the undying heavenly emperor had obtained the green cauldron, and had a great breakthrough. He was revered as a supreme god by the myriad races. It was rumored that the undying heavenly emperor wanted to re-establish the celestial court, but he gave up in the end. This in itself was enough to explain some problems. It's hard to say what period the undying heavenly emperor was from. The myriad races of the ancient times all revered him, and it was said that he was from the immemorial era, or even longer. Yi Fan even guessed that the unknown period after the collapse of the celestial court was the period of the undying heavenly emperor, and he was the victor in the chaos of the gods. He might have seen the venerable emperor, and was the one who obtained the celestial cauldron after the venerable emperor's death. From the venerable emperor's death to the collapse of the celestial court, and then to the period of the undying heavenly emperor, it was difficult to verify. Perhaps even the great ancient emperors had no way to understand. After all, it was too far away. After that, it was the vast and resplendent immemorial era. The Sun Saint Emperor of the Ziwei ancient star field must have seen the celestial cauldron, because Yi Fan had encountered his divine will in the star field. When that single-armed old man saw the damaged green copper, he was shocked and said that it was actually broken. It could be imagined that the celestial cauldron was still intact during the era when the Sun Saint Emperor was revered by all the regions. And in the following period, there must have been a great upheaval. Regarding this catastrophe, there were rumors among the 10,000 ancient races, but it was difficult to explain clearly because the level involved was too high. Even a royal race like the Valley of Gods couldn't fully understand it. Back then, during the battle between Yi Fan and Wang Tung at the Ji family, he took out a black gourd. The young master of the Valley of Gods, Zetian, and his sister were shocked. They vaguely guessed that the black gourd was an artifact that was preserved from the War of the Gods, and its shape was the same as the one recorded in some ancient divine texts. From this, it could be inferred that the scale and terror of the War of the Gods almost destroyed the immemorial era, and wiped out all the races. Yi Fan had consulted others and even learned about it from the ancient races. That catastrophe was far more terrifying than people could imagine, and it was not much different from the legendary collapse of the Celestial Court. That was a War of the Gods. Oh, it seems like the Celestial Cauldron was destroyed during that period and scattered everywhere. There were many things that could be investigated afterwards. Several forbidden regions of the Big Dipper star domain were born, including the Divine Ruins and the Immortal Mausoleum. Later on, the Divine Race Ridge, the Blood Phoenix Mountain, the Fire Qilin Cave, and other ancient emperors ruled the world one after another. This period ended when the Emperor of Fighting passed away in meditation during the last years of the immemorial era. After that, there was a gap in history and it was difficult to say for sure. The Undying Mountain and the others should have appeared during this period or a bit later. Even though there were such forbidden regions in the immemorial era with different names, it was only during this period that they were truly occupied and turned into a place that no one could set foot in. After that, there was another blank period. It was difficult to know for sure, and it was a long period of time during the primordial era. Yi Fan was in a daze. This celestial cauldron ran through the entire ancient history and involved countless ancient stars. It had started from the ancient heaven and had yet to end. Of course, it was difficult to verify what existed before the ancient heaven and the similar glorious eras of the later star domains. Perhaps there were even more extraordinary artifacts than the celestial cauldron. Whoosh! Immortal light surged, submerging the pond again. Yi Fan's eyes flickered with radiance. This was the essence of heaven and earth. It turned into divine liquid here and nourished the celestial cauldron. He snapped back to reality, his heart filled with endless emotions. This cauldron was related to too much, spanning through the past and present. Many great historical events were related to it. Do immortals really exist in this world? Among those who obtained this cauldron, did any of them achieve immortality? He didn't know. It was shrouded in layers of mystery. The passage of time was too long. At the same time, he thought of great Emperor Wushi. It seemed like he didn't rely on anything, yet he still reached the peak. Only, he didn't know if he ascended 80,000 years ago, or if he forcefully broke through the great gates of immortal domain. Longma drank the divine water in the immortal pond with gudong-gudong sounds. Komatsu was extremely quiet, obediently sitting on the side, not disturbing Yi Fan, allowing him to quietly think. The universe is vast and boundless. A few incomparably glorious ancient stars once appeared. If my guess is not wrong, the Celestial Court only controlled one of these regions for a period of time. Yi Fan muttered to himself. Because the Celestial Cauldron was the witness of the Celestial Court, it ran through the past, present, and future of this Supreme Celestial Court. However, as far as he knew, there was at least a Tower of Desolation that could be mentioned in the same breath as the Green Cauldron. Moreover, it had not been destroyed to this day. This was not a product of the Celestial Court, so it was not within the scope of what he had just thought. At the very least, Yi Fan didn't know that it was an expanse of primal chaos. It was hard to guess its origins, which star regions it ran through, and how long it had been. There was no way to deduce its origin, and why it ended up in the Big Dipper star region. At the same time, he thought of the immortal treasure ancient scroll. The front was a vast star chart, while the back had 3 regions. The land of immortal ascension was only one of them. It's been too long. I've only sorted out a few periods regarding the celestial cauldron. Compared to the vast universe, it's insignificant. The Milky Way is called the imperial star. Could it be that the celestial court originated from that star region? It's hard to see the end of the ancient star system. The Hwasong star is full of the Golden Crow race, and the Tongtian star is full of the celestial race. Was it within the scope of the celestial court's rule back then? The more Yi Fan thought about it, the more he felt his head hurt. The long years, the ancient history, the endless universe, there were too many secrets. Ancient heaven might just be a corner of it. Are there immortals who transcend beyond this starry sky? Is there really a monstrous and dazzling world that belongs to immortals? This was the question he was most concerned about. But after thinking through the past and present, he became silent after sorting out some of his thoughts. This was because there had never been any proof that immortals could become immortals. Splash. The divine liquid in the celestial pool splashed everywhere. Yi Fan let out a soft sigh and began to fish out the cauldron in the celestial pool. He said, "If there are no immortals, then I will walk a path of immortal ascension." Chapter 10:13. Bang! When Yi Fan's hand entered the immortal pond, it was repelled by a strange power and couldn't reach the bottom. His eyes flickered as he observed. There were some silk webs on the walls. Each of them was sparkling and flowing with immortal light. They were like the blood vessels of living beings, and they could even breathe in and out. There really is life here. He couldn't help but be astonished. This pond was originally shaped like a placenta, but it was smashed into pieces by the ruthless man. Even now, there was still a powerful life force. Yi Fan didn't act blindly without thinking. He carefully observed the pond walls and revealed an astonished expression. Then he looked towards the distant mountains. The essence spat out by the tens of thousands of dragon head peaks converged here to form a divine pond that nurtured an immortal embryo. That is, when he opened his heavenly gaze, he couldn't help but be astonished. There was a crack between the brows of each dragon head, as if someone had pierced a hole with multicolored mist flowing about. Yi Fan's eyes revealed a strange light. There was no exception among the tens of thousands of dragon heads. There was a delicate palm imprint between their brows, detaining the essence of the mountains. The dragon treasure has been lost. The so-called dragon treasure was the soul of each dragon head peak. It was the true spirit born from the descent of ancient stars, and the immortal essence accumulated over millions of years. A divine light flickered in Yi Fan's eyes as he carefully observed. Even though the water flowing out from the dragon mouths was divine liquid, because of the loss of the dragon treasure, its effects were greatly reduced. This is the work of great Emperor Ruthless? His eyes continuously moved, and then he stared at the immortal pond. This was undoubtedly a placenta that was connected to the tens of thousands of dragon head peaks. The immortal essence nourished it, and it could indeed seize the fortune of the heaven and earth. It should have been able to nurture an immortal embryo. But now, all of this no longer existed. This immortal nurturing place was destroyed by the ruthless man with one slap. Yi Fan couldn't help but become speechless. As expected of the ruthless man, he didn't want anything and was truly ruthless. Yi Fan scattered the immortal light, revealing everything inside the pond. He could see the sparkling blood vessels on the pond walls that led to the tens of thousands of dragon head peaks. The ruthless man used this to slash the tens of thousands of true dragons. The murderous intent was shocking. What a pity. Ancient heaven laid out a grand blueprint for this, experiencing endless time. Yet in the end, it was ruined by a single palm strike from Vicious, the immortal placenta destroyed. Yi Fan narrowed his eyes and looked carefully. He saw that the damaged cauldron at the bottom of the pool was also affected. Clearly, it had been struck by Vicious. This was the hope of becoming an immortal, but Vicious didn't care whether he became an immortal or not. He ignored it and didn't take it away. Yi Fan took a deep breath and operated the army formula. With a swoosh, he fished up the celestial cauldron. Even the strange power could not stop him. Water splashed in all directions, immortal energy rising, multicolored mists rising. This place was brilliant, all types of light swirling about, submerging this place. Boom! Longma made his move. To be exact, it used its hooves. It stood up on its hind legs, and a pair of hooves the size of a face slammed down on Yi Fan. It wanted to snatch away the hope of becoming an immortal. Yi Fan was fearless. His right hand pushed horizontally, and with a forceful slap he blasted it away, preventing it from approaching him. It seems like you really don't know your place. If one day you reach Big Dipper, there is a need to find a few friends for you to exchange pointers with, for example, the Black Emperor, Duanda, and the like. The divine steed let out a long cry, and the draconic cry shook the 9 heavens. The dragon scales on its body flickered like phoenix blood, and brilliance rushed into the heavens. The horse's mane was even more so like a raging fire, violently trembling. Yi Fan swept a glance at it. Seeing that it was attacking again, he threw the all-life source cauldron over. Immediately, the source energy fell down, like a shocking waterfall, pressing down on Longma's body. This was a supreme treasure of the world, and every strand of source energy was heavier than a mountain. Back then, the reason why Yi Fan was able to absorb it into his body was all because of the green copper, absorbing these things. Later on it was refined, and only then could it be used. Otherwise, just the weight of this all-life source root would be enough to crush him to death. Not many people could withstand it. Longma stomped, but it couldn't break free at all. The cauldron had been refined tens of thousands of times by Yi Fan, and now it was already his Tao treasure. It couldn't be broken, and it could be said to be a divine treasure of the world. Komatsu whimpered. Just now Longma attacked Yi Fan, and it was very dissatisfied. It rolled its eyes at Longma, and forcefully waved its little hoe. Yi Fan carefully observed the cauldron, and there were still some sparkling and translucent silk-like objects attached to it. They were repairing the cauldron. The more he looked at it, the more amazed he was. It really was alive. This cauldron was severely damaged. Back then, the 3 legs and the bottom of the cauldron should have been separated, and there were clear cracks on it. Now it had healed and stuck together. Return to the origin. Yi Fan released a light shout. His hands moved about, displaying an astonishing great divine ability. This was a type of reflection of the Tao fruit he obtained after entering the immortal 3 realms. He wanted to see what happened to the immortal pawn back then. This was a type of heaven-defying divine technique that exhausted a great amount of essence energy. It was because he wanted to restore the final scene before the immortal pawn shattered. This type of viewing the past action was something the world wouldn't tolerate. In the end, Yi Fan succeeded, but it was extremely blurry. He only sensed it for a moment, and then he saw a strand of heaven's mysteries from more than 200,000 years ago. He only saw a placenta shatter, and then an immortal cauldron sank to the bottom of the pond. The original cracks on its surface became thicker, and then the cauldron pieces separated, laying there unmoving. Yi Fan didn't say anything for a long time. The vicious person was fierce after all, not caring about anything. Even the hope of achieving immortality was directly shaken down with a single slap, not wanting it at all. Of course, he didn't see that delicate hand. This involved an ancient great emperor, so he didn't dare use the ancient defying technique to spy on it. Otherwise, there would likely be unimaginably terrifying consequences. However, the scene of the placenta and cauldron breaking apart was fixed in his sea of consciousness. It replayed continuously, allowing him to see everything clearly. The immortal cauldron originally had cracks on it, but they had already healed. However, after suffering a world-shocking attack, the cracks widened and split apart again. The divine placenta had already been destroyed, and the restoration effect was far inferior to before. As such, after more than 200,000 years, the 3 legs and the bottom of the cauldron finally merged back together. Yi Fan gently pulled off the sparkling and translucent threads, revealing the immortal cauldron. At the same time, the tens of thousands of dragon head peaks let out a draconic roar. A supreme and saintly aura pervaded the air, towering above the 9 heavens. At this moment, the hearts of all the cultivators on earth palpitated. The more powerful the cultivator, the more obvious it was. They could even hear the draconic roar. I actually obtained it. Yi Fan suspected that he was dreaming, and felt that it was somewhat unreal. This was an item that countless heroes had gone crazy for since ancient times. It originated from the celestial court, and even the ancient sacred emperors and great emperors had to fight over it. Some great sage and quasi-emperor had even paid with their lives for it. There were many mottled marks on the green cauldron, but each mark was very blurry because too much time had passed. It seemed to have returned to its original state, and it was dim and natural. Yifan used his hand to rub it. There was no aura of the extreme Tao seeping out, but it made him feel extremely solemn. Even though it was damaged, it could still sweep through all the realms in his palm. Before entering the Kunlun immortal vein, he had exhausted all his strength to take out the 2 pieces of old bronze from his body. Along the way, the green bronze pieces didn't have any aura fluctuations. Only when Yifan connected them to the cauldron did they emit a blazing light. Yifan was shocked. The bronze pieces were mottled. Ever since they obtained them, they had been like an old man, never taking the initiative. However, right now they released rumbling sounds. There was a large hole at the bottom of the cauldron. After the 2 bronze pieces were placed in, they were perfectly plugged up. Immortal light flowed, and they stuck together. Is it mended just like that? When the brilliance receded and the green cauldron dimmed, Yifan used all of his strength. His head was covered in sweat, and with a caw sound he broke off the 2 pieces of old bronze. They weren't truly mended. As expected, it doesn't work. It needs to be nurtured in the immortal placenta. Where exactly was the secret to becoming an immortal? Yifan opened his heavenly eye and didn't miss a single inch of space. He saw the inside and outside of the cauldron clearly and vividly. The ancient traces on the surface were truly the vicissitudes of time. It was unknown just how much time had passed. There were flowers, birds, fish, insects, the sun, moon, and stars. There were even ancient natives and deities. This cauldron is incredible. The person who forged it had great ambitions. Unfortunately, he couldn't wait until that moment. Yifan's expression was solemn. The traces carved on the cauldron were all extraordinary. The beginning of the world, and the birth of all living things could all be found on it. This was the myriad origin cauldron, and everything could be contained within. He stared at the ancient natives without blinking. He wanted to see through them and mumbled to himself. Could it be that there's a secret to becoming immortal? Countless years ago, there were natives in the world. It was just that it was unknown if they could live forever. The monkey had once revealed that his father, the Emperor of Fighting, had once said that battles between deities were the most terrifying. Where is the opportunity to become an immortal? Yifan shifted his gaze from the traces of the natives to the ancient natives. He then observed the sun, moon, stars, wind, rain, thunder, lightning, flowers, birds, fish, and insects. Myriad origin cauldron. Where exactly is the secret to becoming an immortal? He sat cross-legged and hugged the cauldron as he pondered. For an entire month, Yifan didn't move at all. He was like a boulder as he immersed his mind into the cauldron, trying to comprehend its ancient secrets. Xiao Song obediently stood guard at the side, protecting him. His main purpose was to prevent the dragon horse from breaking free. The purple little thing was doing its best, its big eyes sparkling. Yifan finally opened his eyes. There were thousands of things on the cauldron, and each of them was a type of Tao mark. They were vast and profound, and it was likely that he wouldn't be able to comprehend them all in his lifetime. As for the interior of the cauldron, there were incomprehensible laws and patterns that interweaved to form the supreme Tao. Yifan stood up and fell silent. He looked into the sky and said, "If I want to obtain the method to become an immortal, I need to enter the starry sky and seek guidance from the ancient sages. Perhaps only then will I be able to understand the secret within the cauldron. Perhaps the 10,000 ancient races knew something. Otherwise, why would they fight for the immortal cauldron? There might be records in the ancestral temple of the Yuhua God dynasty, but on the other side of the starry sky, he could only rely on his own guesses. It was difficult for him to comprehend everything. The immortal cauldron is already broken. Why don't I refine it into my myriad energy cauldron?" Yifan said, his heart moved. Seriously speaking, the two were really similar. One was the myriad origin cauldron, the other was the myriad energy cauldron. It could be said that they were a natural match. In the end, he didn't take action. This cauldron was too important and he couldn't simply touch it now. Moreover, Even if he wanted to reforge it, he had no hope at all with his current strength. With his cultivation, not to mention melting the green copper, even a slight attack might cause him to die from the rebound. In ancient China, cauldrons were divine artifacts, and there were too many things to pay attention to. I'm afraid that this immortal cauldron originated from it. Yi Fan's cauldron was the same shape as this cauldron. It was a round cauldron with 3 legs and 2 handles. 1 cauldron, 2 handles, 3 legs, and the Tao had a physical form. It corresponded to Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, and 3 begets all things. Friends on the other side of the starry sky, how are you guys doing? Yi Fan muttered to himself. Now that he had obtained the immortal cauldron, even if it was less than 1/3 of it, he could still stand proudly in an area and fight against an extreme Tao weapon. If he could return to the Big Dipper star region one day, whether it was the Yao Guang Saint attacking with the dragon-patterned black gold emperor weapon, or Huang Shudao, and the others with the ancient imperial weapons, he wouldn't be afraid. There must be many fragments of the immortal cauldron scattered everywhere. I hope that I can collect all of them in the future. Chapter 10:14. Yi Fan put away the myriad qi cauldron. Longma had been suppressed for half a month, and was about to vomit blood. Fortunately, there were divine marks flowing on the cauldron which restrained its killing intent. As soon as the dragon horse was freed, it came up and kicked its hooves. It had been suppressed for half a month and was so angry that it was on fire. Obviously, it was not a kind person. It was a true tyrant of the Kunlun immortal range. Bang! Komatsu's eyes flickered and 2 dragon-shaped purple lights shot out. The 9 slashes of the demon monarch, divine wound, attacked to protect its master. Longma was disdainful. It opened its mouth and let out a breath to disperse it. Xiao Song sat down on the ground and muttered in a low voice, feeling discouraged. Yi Fan smiled and patted its head. How many years have you been cultivating? He flashed and sat on Longma's body. If you still don't know your limits, don't blame me for being heartless. You have to understand that this time, you came with me willingly. Longma struggled, but it couldn't do anything against a freak like the Tao-severing human holy physique. It couldn't move this mountain, at all, even if it was invincible in the immortal 3 realms. It's rare that we manage to enter the land of immortals. The water in this pool is a divine liquid. Whether it's used to concoct medicine or cultivate, it will be very useful, Yi Fan said. Yes, it's very sweet. Komatsu's voice was very young. It raised a small jade bowl with both hands and blinked its bright eyes. It raised its head and looked at Yi Fan, asking him to take a sip. Yi Fan smiled. He took out all kinds of spatial instruments and prepared to collect the divine liquid in the pool. This kind of thing could only be found and not sought. It stole the fortune of heaven and earth and had endless uses. He had already tasted it just now. It was even better than the divine spring in the forbidden land of life. It had a strong fragrance and could be considered a type of miraculous medicine that could prevent aging and extend one's life. It's a pity that the immortal splendor and dragon treasures within the Dragon Head Peaks have all been lost. Otherwise, the divine liquid that flowed out would be heaven-defying. Yi Fan sighed softly. Vicious methods were awe-inspiring. To be able to take action within the formation laid down by the ancient heaven, and pierce through every Dragon Head Peak was truly shocking. Longma was not idle either. He opened his mouth and sucked as much of the divine liquid as he could. Meanwhile, Komatsu patted the small medicine basket on his back, and similarly transformed into a streak of purple light, drawing in the divine liquid and collecting it for himself. However, what they didn't expect was that as soon as they wantonly seized the divine liquid, something strange happened. The immortal pond quickly dried up, and the water and immortal light flowed in reverse, retreating into the distance. What's going on? Longma's eyes widened. Yi Fan let out a soft shout and operated the army formula to seize the divine water. With a splash, the last few dozen kilograms of water was swept up, and the rest all flowed backward and disappeared into the mountain. 10,000 dragons sucked in water. Tens of thousands of Dragon Head Peaks sucked in the divine liquid, sweeping away all the essence and immortal light, no longer nourishing this place. This was a reversal, the exact opposite of what happened before. These dragon heads all let out draconic roars as if they were alive. Stony dragon scales opened up on their bodies, and their eyes even flickered with divine light. Yi Fan was astonished. If Vicious didn't make a swift and decisive move, how powerful would these stone dragons be? Boom! With a final tremor, all the immortal splendor was swallowed into the dragon's mouth, leaving only a dense mist of light below. The spiritual energy in the entire valley had sharply decreased. That's fine as well. Earth's heaven and earth will slowly recover its vitality, Yi Fan said. After taking away this immortal cauldron, the 10,000 dragon head peak would no longer absorb the earth's spiritual energy, and would no longer need to nourish the land of ascension. In fact, it would even nourish the earth's rivers and mountains. Yi Fan had no way to destroy this place. Not to mention him, even all the heroes since ancient times couldn't do it. The killing trap laid down by the ancient heaven had deterred the ages. No one could solve it, and those who touched it would die. Auspicious light flowed within the immortal valley. Even though it wasn't as good as before, it was still far better than any place Yi Fan had ever been to. The fragrance of ancient medicine wafted through the air, and there was even a wisp of immortal divine medicine filling the air, intoxicating one's mind. Let's go, the world is finally going to change again. Yi Fan rode on Longma, and left the land of ascension with Komatsu, disappearing into the mountain range. The majestic Kunlun mountains were endless and stretched out endlessly. Yi Fan and the others finally came out after walking for a long time. They were now at the border between Xinjiang and Qinghai. The blue sky and white clouds felt somewhat illusory. On this land, there were many regions hidden within ancient formations. Ordinary people simply didn't know about them. It was like two different worlds. After leaving Kunlun and arriving at the outside world, Longma was immediately filled with amazement, and even more disdain. This was because it was too desolate, without a bit of spiritual energy. Compared to the fairyland-like world in the ancient formation, the world in front of them was like a desert. Komatsu, on the other hand, was very happy. It had originally lived in this kind of world, and had long become accustomed to it. It cried out in joy. Yi Fan's return riding on a Longma caused a huge commotion. All the Dao halls were shaken. It was rumored that this was the mount of the ancient holy emperor, and only those with great virtue could ride it. And now, this person actually directly subdued one. This left everyone speechless and tongue-tied. This was a pure Longma, and not a mixed-blood descendant. Since ancient times, only a few of them had been born. It was an auspicious holy beast born from the heaven and earth. Master. The little Taoist master Zhang Qingyang paid his respects. This nameless short mountain hadn't changed much. There were still only a few thatched cottages and a medicinal field. Yi Fan sat cross-legged on a bluestone. He saw that this disciple of his was actually seriously injured. What happened? Nowadays, in this world, there was still anyone who dared to bully his disciple. A few years ago, he entered the holy city of Jerusalem alone, and then killed his way into the Vatican. He had long since shaken the world. Fortunately, you returned at this time on a Longma. Otherwise, my preaching in the celestial court might really be greatly affected, Zhang Qingyang said. Just a few days ago, someone entered a Dao hall in the celestial court. His words were extremely disrespectful, and he set fire to the celestial emperor statue on the spot, seriously injuring Zhang Qingyang. This had a huge impact. Naturally, the little Taoist master of the celestial court was injured. This was naturally a big deal. That person said that the celestial court didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How could they dare to establish a religion in this name? They should disband as soon as possible, or else they would be wiped out. Yi Fan naturally knew that there were many strange people in the world. Even if the earth was in the age of Dharma decay, there must be some unknown masters on earth. However, this kind of publicity was somewhat unexpected. That person wasn't very old, not much older than me. He was young and full of vigor. I don't think he was a strange person with an ageless appearance, Zhang Qingyang said. Yi Fan nodded. The little Taoist master of today was not the same as before. With his help, he had been baptized by thunder many times. In this world, only Dragon Sparrow and Yu Weiyu could be compared to him. The main thing is that one of his treasures is too powerful. It's called the Seal of Void. It broke dozens of bones in my body with just one shake. Zhang Qingyang explained the situation that day in detail. If it wasn't for the Phoenix Goddess and Yin Xiaoyu who were also there, and quickly took the little Taoist master away, he might have been in danger this time. Yi Fan nodded and said, "That's a bit too much. Didn't he want to wipe out the celestial court? I'll wait for him to appear." Little Pine walked forward and took out a medicine king stalk from the small medicine basket. It was 1/2 meter tall, and the entire stalk looked as if it was carved from red agate. It was sparkling and resplendent. This was a type of spiritual vine, and its medicinal fragrance assailed the nostrils. "Ah, this is... Thank you, little senior brother." Zhang Qingyang was very steady. Unlike the Phoenix Goddess who often teased Komatsu, he naturally knew what it was. It was most likely a rare elixir. "This is a king medicine. It can regenerate flesh and bones from the dead and extend one's lifespan," Yi Fan said. "A king medicine?" The little Taoist master was stunned. It wasn't that he didn't think it was precious, but he didn't expect it to be a precious medicine that was hard to come by even in ancient times. He said with a trembling voice, "It's too precious." Yi Fan told him to keep it for future use. Then he took out some divine liquid from the celestial pool and gave it to him. Only then did he let him rest. It wasn't long before Yan Xiaoyu, Zhang Yifan, and the others rushed over successively, and they were extremely shocked. Every single one of them had obtained a medicine king herb and some divine liquid, and they were simply like immortal pills to them. That was because these things were divine herbs even in ancient times. A king medicine that could extend one's lifespan by hundreds of years was enough to make a saint bow. "Master, your trip to Kunlun this time was really a great harvest. You must take us with you next time you dig for treasures. Hurry up and think about which ancient Taoist rites on earth there are. Let's go to all of them. I'm sure we'll be able to get a lot of rare divine items." That's right. The birthplace of the Greek gods, the ancient Taoist rites in Egypt and India, and some ancient lands within our borders should have treasures sealed there. After tasting the sweetness, they urged Yi Fan to take action again. This trip to Kunlun had a great harvest. Needless to say, 17 king medicines were obtained, including the divine cauldron and the purple golden pagoda of divine marks. As for the other less mature medicines, they filled Komatsu's medicine basket. Even if the environment on Earth didn't change, they wouldn't have to worry about a lack of elixirs. You must cultivate seriously. Everything depends on yourself. You must grow up as soon as possible. Maybe one day I'll leave, Yi Fan warned. After staying on Earth for so long, he couldn't forget his old friends on the other side of the starry sky. "Master, where are you going?" the disciples asked. They wanted to follow him into the star region and leave this world. A few years passed in the blink of an eye. The young man who had seriously injured Zhang Qingyang and threatened to flatten the celestial court had never appeared again. Yi Fan had been back on Earth for 10 years. His cultivation had improved and he looked up at the starry sky every day. It was his life's regret that he couldn't see his parents one last time. Now that his fate had been fulfilled, all that was left was the path of immortality. But how could he leave? In the past few years, Yi Fan had gone to many places to search for the coordinates of the ancient star region. Back then so many sages had left, so there must have been some clues left behind. During this period, a few gurus in India contacted him again, saying that they might be able to obtain a more complete ancient incantation. They would most likely be able to use it to enter Spirited Mountain. Because of this, Yi Fan had personally gone to India and caused a great commotion. He went in and out of ancient places and exchanged pointers with some so-called masters. Naturally, it was difficult for him to meet a worthy opponent. Moreover, he obtained a Veda Sutra. Even though it was badly damaged, it was enough to shock the world. Both the Brahmanism and Gautama Buddha's Buddhism were deeply influenced by this sutra. This was a primitive ancient sutra that recorded some unique and profound meanings. Yi Fan had studied this for several months. The furnace had nurtured 100 sutras, and his body had absorbed 10,000 Tao. He used this to nourish and nurture his own Tao law. In the end, he obtained a lot of incantations in India. Then, he set off with a few gurus and brought Komatsu to Spirited Mountain. This was because he felt that there might be a 5-colored altar on Spirited Mountain in the Tibetan area. Perhaps there were the coordinates of the Northern Dipper star region. However, he was disappointed. The incantation was incomplete, so he still couldn't enter Gautama Buddha's place of worship. In the end, he failed at the last step and couldn't pry into the mysteries of Buddhism. It's been 10 years. I wonder what kind of waves have been stirred up in the northern Dipper star region. Yi Fan looked up at the starry sky and muttered to himself. On the other side of the starry sky, there was a great era where kings stood side by side and tens of thousands of races coexisted. It was unprecedented. There were many outstanding people there. Ancient princes and even princes might appear there. Not for anything else but to wait for the opening of the path of immortality. There was no need to think carefully to know that these years must have been magnificent. Heroes fought for supremacy, fairies soared in the sky, and stars shone brightly. 10 years have passed. Perhaps many people have almost forgotten me as an opponent. As Yi Fan looked up at the starry sky, an ordinary herdsman in the Tibetan area was surprised, happy, and worried. After a serious illness, a 3-year-old child developed the most mysterious phenomenon of Hidong, Historia. He was illiterate and had never studied scriptures, but he could actually recite scriptures that were millions of words long. Moreover, they were all lost. All these years, Yi Fan had entered many secret places and many ancient Taoist rites. The people of Taoism naturally knew what he was looking for. On this day, an old Taoist from Mount Longhu, the ancestral court of Taoism, came to visit and told him that there might be a divine land on earth that could lead to the depths of the mysterious star region. Chapter 1015. The old Taoist from the ancestral court of Taoism was wearing an old Taoist robe. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. He was over 1,000 years old, and told Yi Fan that Panlei might have a path to the outer realm. However, he also made it clear that the people of this celestial island rarely set foot on the central continent. It was rare to see one in 100 years, and it was difficult for outsiders to find it. Panlei had been known as a celestial realm since ancient times. It was a divine mountain inhabited by celestials in the sea. In ancient times, mortal emperors often sent ships to cross the sea in search of the elixir of immortality. Yi Fan was moved after hearing this. He expressed his gratitude and gave the old Taoist some precious elixirs. He also talked about many cultivation experiences, and personally sent the old Taoist to the mountain gate. There was Kunlun on land and the 3 mountains in the sea. This saying had been passed down since ancient times. One of the 3 mountains was Panlei. It was the everlasting hometown of celestials. The talented and bold Emperor Wu of Han had once built an artificial ether pool in the Oasis Palace, in order to pursue immortality. The legendary Panlei Celestial Mountain was on it, and it cost a lot of money. The most famous person among them was naturally the first emperor. He once ordered the alchemist Su Fu to lead thousands of boys and girls out to the sea to seek immortality. They never returned and everyone knew about it. Yi Fan pondered seriously. Ever since he came back, he had traveled almost all of the ancient Taoist rite but hadn't found an ancient starry path to the outer realm. In ancient times, there were many virtuous people on earth, but they all left in the end. No matter what, they should have left some clues. Maybe it really is in the celestial realm of Panlei, he muttered to himself. Only the rite in the sea hadn't been searched. Yi Fan went out to sea and rode on Longma with Zhang Qingyang, Yu Weiyu and the other disciples. This time they insisted on going together. They thought that Yi Fan was going to search for treasures like he did in Kunlun. The classic of mountains and seas recorded that there were 3 celestial mountains in the sea: Panlei, Yingzhou and Fangzhong. The mountains were celestial realms with elixirs of immortality. These 3 celestial mountains had been famous since ancient times, and were known as the Eastern Celestial Realm. After their rise, they had the potential to replace Western Kunlun. When the common people mentioned the fairyland, they mostly knew about Panlei, but rarely mentioned Kunlun. The waves of the blue sea were magnificent and boundless. Only by personally entering the sea would one understand how vast it was. It could make one relax. Master, is there really a dragon palace in the sea? Can we go there as guests? Yin Xiaoyu suddenly had an idea. Even if there are, they would only be a few flood dragons. Only ancient emperors would be able to enter the true dragon abode as guests. Longma said disdainfully. A few years had passed, and its arrogance hadn't changed at all. However, when it encountered a powerful human sacred body, even a dragon would have to bow down. Thus it couldn't do anything. They had been out at sea for half a month, but they still hadn't found anything. They didn't know where Ponlay Immortal Mountain was, but they did find a dilapidated ancient abode that had long been submerged by the seawater. There was nothing Yifan could do. The immortal mountains in the sea were the hardest to find. They did not have much interaction with the cultivators on land. All that was left were some legends. It should be in the Bohai Sea. Yifan muttered to himself. He spread out his powerful divine sense to search for abnormalities and capture the chi of the ancient formation. The records of the grand historian recorded. Since Wei, Xian, and Yan Zhao sent people to the sea to seek the 3 sacred mountains of Ponlay, Fangzhong, and Yingzhou, they were in the Bohai Sea. When the disaster came, the ship would be led away by the wind. All the immortals and the elixir of immortality are there. Boom. Suddenly, the waves in the distance shot up to a height of tens of feet. Then a huge whirlpool appeared, trying to suck Yifan and the others in. It's a giant clam, Yan Xiaoyu exclaimed. Under the sea, an old clam that was tens of feet long opened its shell and swallowed the heaven and earth. It caused a strong gale on the sea, trying to swallow them up. This was an old demon that had been around for many years. It could feel the spiritual energy on their bodies. If it swallowed them, it would be greatly beneficial to it. Thus, it launched a shipwreck, trying to drag them down. It's rare to meet an old demon that has cultivated for more than 800 years in the dragon transformation secret realm, Yifan said. Without saying a word, Zhang Yifan took out his flying sword, which turned into a blazing light and slashed at the sea. Instantly, huge waves surged up to the sky and created a trench that was hundreds of feet long, forcing the seawater to 2 sides. Clang! However, the old clam was not an ordinary being. Its cultivation was profound and impressive. It opened its shell wide, and a total of 18 sea deity pearls flew out. They actually froze the space. Zhang Yifan struggled and almost died. The 7 swords merged into one, and created a path for him to escape. He had a shocked expression on his face. All these years, under Yifan's protection, he had survived several lightning tribulations. As long as he was in the dragon transformation secret realm, not many people could make things difficult for him. It's a dragon clam. It has the life cultivation pearl, no wonder it is so powerful. Yifan revealed a look of astonishment. Inside the clamshell was a dragon-shaped old clam. The 18 magical beads were made from its flesh and blood. After growing to this stage, they had already fused with their spiritual natures, and were comparable to ancient magical beads. Dragon Sparrow made his move. As a fellow demon, he knew the weakness of the old clam. As soon as he arrived, a long rainbow pierced through the clam's shell. His demonic aura was monstrous as he aimed for its vital point. Clang! The 18 pearls were dazzling, stirring up endless waves. The old clam was an old demon that had cultivated for many years. It immediately felt that something was wrong. It could not afford to offend this group of people, so it turned around to escape. However, how could Yifan let it escape? A strand of mother chi shot out from between his brows. It was as heavy as Mount Tai and suppressed it on the spot. The clam's shell let out cracking sounds. Immortal, please spare my life. This little demon is ignorant and should not have offended you. The old clam's soul almost left its body. It never thought that it would meet such a character that surpassed the ancient sect masters in this era without laws. If you want to live, then tell us where the immortal mountain of Ponlay is. The phoenix goddess giggled. Even though she had a peerless beauty, her body was filled with layers of killing intent. Yifan nodded. This old clam was not a kind creature. Even if he didn't cut off his cultivation, he still had to give it a warning. It would be best if he could find out where the immortal realm was. I don't know. The 3 immortal mountains of the sea are too mysterious, and there is no way to find it. Otherwise, this old clam would have gone there long ago. I heard that the energy there is abundant, and has never dried up since ancient times. Then what's the use of keeping you? Instead of continuing to bring disaster to the sea region, it is better to just kill you. The phoenix goddess revealed her killing intent to intimidate the old demon. Immortals, please spare my life. Even though I don't know, I can provide some clues. The old clam begged for mercy. In the end, it led these individuals to a cave in the sea. The underwater world was extremely hazy, but this place was filled with precious splendor. It was sparkling and translucent. This was a palace constructed from all types of beautiful and transparent corals. There were many formations and Tao traces engraved here. This was an extremely ancient underwater palace. There were a few fish, prawns, and other small demons gathered here. The palace master was a seahorse spirit. He had already lived for 1,500 years. He was one of the overlords of this ocean world, and all creatures in the four seas had to respect him. The old seahorse's true body was several hundred zhang in length. He turned into a scarlet-haired Taoist and welcomed them in an extremely courteous manner. His spiritual senses were sharp and powerful, so he could sense how terrifying Yi Fan and Longma were. He felt great fear inside. Yi Fan directly stated his intentions and asked where Panlei was. If the overlords of the sea didn't know, then there really was nothing he could do. He could only withdraw. This old one indeed knows, but that place is too terrifying. There are ancient killing formations arranged in the water, and I couldn't pass through them even after trying several times. I cannot enter the island. The old seahorse reminded out of goodwill. It's fine. Palace master, just tell us. Yi Fan was also extremely courteous, carrying a smile as he conversed with him. In the end, the old seahorse personally led the way, bringing them into a mysterious sea region. Normal people couldn't approach this place at all, and would mysteriously make a detour. Meanwhile, they weren't ordinary people. When they approached this place, they felt waves of cold killing intent. As soon as they came into contact with it, there would be streaks of sword energy hacking through the heavens. This old one can only bring you here. I don't dare go any further. The old seahorse said. Many thanks to Palace Master. Yi Fan seriously expressed his thanks. He brought his disciples forward with large steps. His cauldron floated above his head, releasing endless source energy that surrounded them. No matter how many magical techniques or divine abilities attacked, they were all blocked. In the rear, the old seahorse was stupefied, almost petrified. He muttered, even the ancient sect masters are far from comparable. Could this be the master of the celestial court of the continent? Yi Fan sat on Longma, the cauldron above his head releasing over 10,000 silk ribbons. 10,000 methods couldn't touch his body. It was as if he had entered an uninhabited land, directly entering this mysterious sea region. This ancient formation really is vast. We've already advanced several hundred li, yet we still haven't made it through. Yu Weiyu was inwardly speechless. This is too slow, watch me. Longma became impatient. It felt like Yi Fan's disciples weren't moving fast enough. Its four hooves shone with brilliance, and fiery light immediately rushed into the heavens. A fiery path appeared on the dark blue sea surface, leading straight into the distance. The dragon horse let out a long roar and charged forward with Yi Fan on its back. It almost threw off Xiaosong, who was on the horse's butt. Xiaosong reacted quickly and grabbed the dragon horse's tail, grumbling in dissatisfaction. Zhang Qingyang, Yu Weiyu, Zhan Yifan, and the others were involuntarily pulled by a fiery light. They stepped on the fiery path as if they were being pulled by someone. This Longma's magical power is truly heaven-defying. Only Master can subdue it. This is the legendary fiery divine escape technique. At its peak, all techniques can't get close to it. It can travel between the sun and the moon, and even the ancient formation can't stop it. The expressions of Yi Fan's disciples all changed. It was said that the person who could use this technique must have the bloodline power that was unparalleled in the world. In the ancient times, he was a terrifying existence that ruled over an area, and was invincible among those of the same level. Longma rushed for 800 miles. The fiery path pressed on the waves, and all kinds of ancient marks of Tao couldn't get close to it. Even if the fiercest killing light occasionally rushed over, it would be dissolved by the myriad chi cauldron. Finally, the celestial aura was hazy. A huge island appeared in front of them. It stood tall in the sea, and the surrounding area was overflowing with multicolored light. We finally found it, Yi Fan said softly. This place should be Panlei Celestial Mountain. Whether it was the classic of mountains and seas or the historical records, it was mentioned that the three celestial mountains in the sea, Panlei, Fangzong, and Yingzhou, had the elixir of immortality. Whether it was true or not, it was enough to infer that they were extraordinary. Yi Fan and the others landed on the island. They couldn't help but sigh at the size of this island. It was almost comparable to a continent. Even the cold dragon sparrow couldn't help but say that they could consider adding another continent in addition to the 7 great continents. When they left the coast and went several hundred miles in, they were even more dumbstruck. Other than some towns, they also saw a few ancient cities. There were many residents on the island. This was an ancient world, and the way they dressed and lived was no different from the Qin dynasty in China. The spiritual energy on this island is too abundant. It hasn't been affected by the age of chaos. They couldn't help but be shocked. In the barren mountains and on the precipitous cliffs, spiritual energy pervaded the air. Spiritual medicine could be found, just like in the ancient times. Strange herbs and precious medicines didn't go extinct, and were discovered from time to time. Yi Fan asked around and found out that there was only one sacred cultivation sect on the island. It had the same name as the island, and was called Ponlai. Great Immortals, Ponlai Immortal Mountain is quite far from here. However, a little celestial being is overseeing a holy city not too far away. You all can pay him a visit first. A kind-hearted woodcutter pointed out. Yi Fan and the others expressed their thanks. They originally wanted to directly go to Ponlai Immortal Mountain, but they didn't know the way, so they could only head to that holy city first. Their tone is truly not small. They actually call themselves celestial being. Could it be that they also have the same strength as Master? A few disciples discussed. This holy city was extremely vast and imposing. There were cultivators guarding the city gates. When they saw Yi Fan arrive on Longma, they were immediately shocked. They reported to the people inside, startling the so-called little celestial being. He personally went up the city gate tower to take a look. It's him. Zhang Qingyang's expression immediately changed. He stared at the youngster on top of the city gate. For years ago, it was precisely this person who seriously injured him. He tore apart a portion of the Celestial Court's building and burned down Yi Fan's divine statue. I was wondering who it was. Turns out it's you all. Have you disbanded the Celestial Court sect? The young man on top of the city gate tower revealed a hint of ridicule. You all really aren't worthy of using this name. Hurry up and burn down all of those Celestial Emperor's divine statues. Chapter 10:16. The city gate tower was tall and majestic. There were many spell formations engraved on it, and Tao patterns densely covered it. If one were to force their way in, they would definitely be killed. The young man on the city wall had a frivolous expression. He did not care about Zhang Qingyang and the others at all. However, when he stared at Yi Fan seriously, his heart skipped a beat. You look exactly like the statue of the Heavenly Emperor. So, you are the master of the Celestial Court? The little celestial being on the city wall raised his eyebrows slightly, and did not take it seriously. Yi Fan ignored him and sat calmly on the Longma. Both he and the horse hid their qi dynamic. One could not tell what kind of expert he was. He turned a blind eye to the question. Beside him, Zhang Qingyang stepped forward. He was severely injured by this person a few years ago and broke dozens of bones. As the little Taoist master of Taoism, it could be said that he was very aggrieved. However, he had not seen this person since then. You destroyed the buildings of the Celestial Court and burned the statue of the Heavenly Emperor. Now that we have met, please compensate us. Zhang Qingyang was not angry and said calmly, Ha ha ha. The young man on the city gate tower laughed loudly. His face was full of contempt as if he had heard the funniest joke. He shook his head and said, Reckless. After so many years, Zhang Qingyang had been preaching everywhere, and had long smoothed out his edges. He had a steady personality and did not look angry at all. It was still the same words from before. He wanted him to compensate. Yi Fan was here to seek justice for him. He knew that his master would not let him be wronged, so there was nothing to worry about. He was calm and composed, neither servile nor overbearing. Frogs at the bottom of a well, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare you establish the Celestial Court with people like you? I was going to see if it was disbanded or not. I didn't expect you to come. The young man on the city gate tower was very arrogant. 2 rays of cold electricity shot out from his eyes. Then he once again stared at Yi Fan and sized him up. However, he couldn't find anything. He said, "So you are the leader of the Celestial Court. I was talking to you just now. Why didn't you respond?" Yi Fan continued to ignore him. He sat on Longma and treated him like air. A disciple at the side spoke. He was very aloof. The little celestial being of Panlei revealed a displeased expression. His status was extremely high, and no one had ever dared to disregard him. He cast a sidelong glance at him and said, "Do you also want to learn from the ancient demonic deities and gather faith to conceive a devil fetus? But you are not qualified. I think you'd better destroy the statue and burn the celestial court as soon as possible. Otherwise, when I, Immortal Master Panlei, make his move, you'll be in big trouble." "Who do you think you are? You dare to boast shamelessly in front of my master?" Dragon Sparrow said coldly. "There is only one celestial being in this world. You want to establish the celestial court without our consent. If you don't want to die, then burn yourself to death." The young man on the city gate tower said coldly. Yi Fan's heart moved. There was definitely a problem here. It actually involved the struggle for faith. It seemed like this Panlei was also going to preach. Otherwise, he wouldn't say such things. What celestial being devil fetus? I think you've gone mad. The world is so big. Do I need the permission and approval of Panlei to establish a religion? Zhang Qingyang berated. You're right. To establish such a great religion, you must obtain my Panlei's approval. Otherwise, you can only destroy your own foundation. The little celestial being on the city gate tower said coldly. Even the heavenly phoenix maiden, who had been smiling all this while, was angry. She said with a cold expression, "Your Panlei is truly awe-inspiring. Whether or not the celestial heavens can establish itself depends on you. Who do you think you are?" Panlei has always been a land of immortals since ancient times, ruling over all cultivation inheritances. Before the ancient sages left, they entrusted us with the task of overlooking the Middle Earth. If any inheritances that don't conform to the heavenly rules appear, we can deal with them. The young man on the city wall said coldly. Yu Weiyu opened his mouth and said, "My Kunlun is an immortal sect, but we never dared to act like this. Your Panlei is acting like this. Do you really think you're the ruler of the world?" Kunlun? The young man on the city wall laughed loudly. He shook his head and revealed a look of contempt. He said, "If we talk about ancient times, that place was indeed the capital of immortals. However, the stars have changed. When the ancient sages left, your place had already declined. The three immortal realms of Panlei, Fangzong, and Yingzhou have already become orthodox. There's nothing to say. Isn't it enough to flatten this Panlei? There's no need to talk nonsense with him." Longma had a fiery temper and was very direct. Even though it bore the name of an auspicious sacred beast, it didn't have any of the strength of the ancient sages' mounts. It had always had the temperament of a bandit. A mixed-blood wild horse dares to boast shamelessly. Panlei's little Taoist master sneered. He had never thought that this was a real Longma. "Master, I'm willing to attack the city and demand an explanation," Zhang Qingyang said. Yi Fan nodded. "If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold." Since he had already said so much, he might as well just let Longma go. "Huh?" The little celestial being couldn't stop laughing. A hint of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, "A loser dares to speak so arrogantly. Back then, I could crush you with one hand. What progress can you make now?" At this point, he leaped down from the city gate tower and walked in the void. He raised his hand and pressed down on the little Taoist master, as if he was an elder lecturing his nephew. "Today, I will break a few more of your bones. I will let you understand that the will of Panlei cannot be defied." His palm and fingers flickered with a clear radiance and turned into a mountain peak. This was a type of seal that condensed the divine will of the ancient divine mountain and combined it with his cultivation to suppress the enemy. Zhang Qingyang let out a light shout. His body gave off an immeasurable amount of light and turned into a divine disk. He stood in the void like a deity. Then, with a wave of his hand, a waterfall-like holy radiance flowed from all directions and lifted up all the divine mountains to resist this attack. This was the power of faith. Yi Fan didn't approve of cultivating it. He felt that in the end, Everything still depended on oneself. Because if the inheritance of the celestial court was gone, this power would be completely useless. However, the little Taoist master was serious about imparting. He put all his heart and soul into it. In the end, he couldn't help but walk this path. He especially wanted to ask for his guidance. Yi Fan pondered seriously and deduced carefully. He also thought that it was feasible. Unless the master of the celestial court died, or the orthodoxy was destroyed, there was no need to worry. For this reason, Yi Fan specially went to the Vatican. Through the divine nights, he found the secret technique of faith and gave it to Zhang Qingyang. During these years, the little Taoist master's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. He also went through a few lightning tribulations and was baptized. With the pure power of thought on his body, he was already a heavenly master in name and in reality. He could borrow the power of the celestial court. Boom! Zhang Qingyang moved freely. The pure power of thought came from the void. He evolved the true dragon seal and 81 heavenly dragons attacked. All of them raised their heads and roared. It was extremely magnificent. You've made some progress, but it's still not enough. Continue to lie down and break your bones and tendons, shouted the little celestial being in Panlei. He opened his mouth and spat out a streak of extremely dazzling divine splendor. This was a precious imprint known as the Void Imprint. It was refined from an ancient divine mountain, and then fused with a segment of the Void Imprint. Its name had shaken the ancient times, and it was a king-grade precious artifact. For years ago, dozens of Zhang Qingyang's bones were broken by this divine seal. If not for Yi Fan passing on a life-saving technique to him, he would have died that year. But now he was not afraid. Waves surged majestically above his head, and the chi of all creation cauldron appeared. Tens of thousands of layers of light screens fell down majestically and endlessly, blocking the seal of the void. This was Yi Fan's cauldron. Now that it had become a king's divine weapon, it contained endless power of faith inside. It was heavier than a mountain, and was eternally indestructible. It was a truly invincible precious weapon. Ka. The seal of the void transformed into a divine mountain that was hundreds of feet high, covering Zhang Qingyang, Yi Fan and the others below. It wanted to suppress them together, but at this moment, a cracking sound was heard. The little celestial being's expression changed. Wang. The void trembled. The chi of all creation cauldron swallowed up the splendor that filled the sky, wanting to absorb the seal of the void into the cauldron. Rise! The little celestial being of Panlei shouted. The seal of the void had intercepted a piece of divine path law, which contained the mysteries of the void. At this moment, with a flash of splendor, it was about to disappear into nothingness. Zhang Qingyang was calm and natural. He formed a seal with his hands and his eyes were deep. He activated the chi of all creation cauldron. Tens of thousands of silk ribbons fell down and fixed the seal of the void in place. Without any suspense, it entered the cauldron. What? Only at this moment did the little celestial being of Panlei panic. He felt that the situation was not good. A few years ago, he almost beat the person in front of him to death and trampled him under his feet. But now he was no match for him. Bang! The chi of all creation cauldron fell, bringing with it an endless power of faith. Like a vast ocean, it broke the bones of the little celestial being on the spot. His body flew out and fell below the city wall. The injuries were similar to the injuries from 4 years ago. However, the two of them had switched positions. The little celestial being was almost crushed to death. He struggled there like a dead fish. In the end, Zhang Qingyang stepped on his chest. My master is not someone you can compare to. The celestial court is also not a place that you, Panlei, can humiliate. Whether I establish a orthodoxy or not, why do I need your permission and approval? You. Dozens of the bones of the little celestial being of Panlei were broken. Looking at the big foot on his chest, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? At the back, the phoenix goddess giggled and taunted mercilessly. She said, Lord Celestial Being, you command the world and respect the people. Don't just lie down and give orders. This is really an insult to your identity. You guys are the ears of the world. This is not good. The little celestial being almost fainted from anger. He gritted his teeth and stared at the people in front of him. His anger was stirred. It seems that the little celestial being of Panlei is far inferior to the little Taoist master of our celestial court. Do we really need your approval to establish a orthodoxy or not? Even a person with a temperament like Zhang Yifan spoke out to attack him. The little celestial being's anger surged, and he continuously coughed out mouthfuls of blood. He was originally high and mighty, but now he was being stepped on by others. This made him extremely angry and sullen. How dare you? Who are you guys to behave atrociously in my Panlei? A shout was heard. An old man appeared on top of the city gate. Another old woman also rushed over on an auspicious cloud. The old man on top of the city wall had a profound magical power. Compared to the Taoist sects of the Central Earth, he was obviously a great practitioner of divine power. In this Panlei, the spiritual qi had not dried up yet. It was not surprising that there were practitioners with magical power. He stretched out a big hand and grabbed towards the cauldron of myriad qi. He wanted to snatch it away by force. He was a person who knew his stuff. He naturally recognized that this might be a peerless treasure. His eyes flickered and revealed a look of surprise. At the same time, there was a hint of worry. "Qingyang, come back," Yifan called out. In the past 10 years, the abilities of the few disciples had improved by leaps and bounds. In this age of Dharma ending, they could already hold their own. However, they still could not compare to this kind of person. At this moment, he had already dismounted from the horse. He let the divine chariot behave atrociously, and went up against the supermaster of Panlei. The dragon horse let out a long neigh. It had long found the people there an eyesore. It turned into a fiery light and charged over. One of its hooves stomped on the little heavenly master's body, creating a bloody hole on the spot. The little heavenly master's body was almost broken into two. If it had not restrained its magical power, the little celestial being would not have been left with his bones. He would definitely have been trampled into flying ashes. "How dare you?" The old man who leaped out of the city was furious. He abandoned the cauldron of myriad qi and rushed towards Longma. He was going to kill him on the spot. At the same time, the old woman who came riding on a colorful cloud had also arrived. She raised her dragon-headed walking stick and swung it over. It was extremely heavy. She wanted to smash it into meat paste. "Seniors, this is not our fault. It is this young man from Panlei who is too overbearing." Zhang Qingyang put away the cauldron and retreated. He spoke calmly. "Don't care about anything else. How dare you behave atrociously here? I will take you down first." The old woman shouted. "Don't care about anything else. You are really used to being high and mighty. How awe-inspiring. Longma, do as you see fit." Yifan finally spoke. "Kill without mercy. I will take responsibility if anything happens," the little celestial being who was on the ground said. Longma let out a long roar and stood up. Its two hooves smashed down, turning the two people's weapons into scrap metal. Its speed was too fast. Immediately after, each person was hit by its hooves. Two hoof holes appeared on the two people's bodies. They directly collided with the city wall. With a rumble, the wall turned into powder. Longma's eyes were filled with disdain as it said, "People like you dare to put on airs like I am the supreme one? I can kill thousands of you with a single hoof." The two people on the ground were horrified. They could be considered super experts. As half-step almighty, they had the power to look down on the Middle Earth. In the end, this group of people was so powerful. It was just a horse, yet it could send them flying with a single hoof. Moreover, it seemed like it didn't use any divine power at all. It was truly unimaginable. This is Longma. Finally, the two people were horrified. They saw some clues. This was an auspicious beast that only the ancient holy emperor could ride. Why did it appear again today? On the side, the little celestial being was completely stupefied. The people of the celestial court were so powerful? This far exceeded his expectations. He felt a wave of panic in his heart. You guys?" His words were trembling. He hurriedly used his hand to block up his intestines. There was a bloody hole there. Longma had trampled over it, and the upper and lower halves of its body were almost separated. You? When this dragon moved unhindered in Kunlun, who dared to defy me? You are just a celestial island of Panlei. Yet you dare to command the world? This seat can trample you all over with a single hoof. Longma was like a bandit as it looked at them disdainfully. It walked back and forth in front of them, touching its spoils of war. In the end, it was so angry that it almost trampled them to death. Go and report to the sect master, and invite the celestial being. The old woman was horrified. She rushed into the city and transmitted sound. She knew that they had encountered a fierce character. This was definitely not someone they could provoke. The little celestial being was even more stupefied. He didn't say a word. There's no need. We will naturally go to the celestial mountain of Panlei as guests. I want to personally ask if I need your Panlei's permission to establish a sect in the Middle Earth. Yi Fan said. Since things had already reached this step, there wasn't much else to say. If things really became tense, then trampling on Panlei was fine. Chapter 10:17. Clang! Longma stood up on its hind legs and stomped down with its front hooves. The entire city wall in front of it was shaken into dust. Little celestial being, who was on the ground, turned pale. This divine steed was too evil. What kind of realm had it reached? Little celestial being felt a chill down his spine. Trampling them to death was as easy as stepping on ants. There was a formation platform in the center of the ancient city. There were all kinds of complicated Tao patterns carved on it. With a flash of light, a quick-witted disciple disappeared to deliver a message. Fellow Taoist, I think there is some misunderstanding. We can talk about it, the old woman on the ground said. She had a bad premonition. Even the overbearing little celestial being kept his mouth shut. If he put on airs now, he believed that the vile Longma would stomp his head into a smashed watermelon. The three injured people all had the same thought. They had to calm Yi Fan down and wait for the celestial masters to arrive before settling the score. They could only endure it for now. The Phoenix goddess sneered. What's there to talk about? My master needs your permission to establish a religion in the Middle Earth. You are all high and mighty celestials. You are not on the same level as us mortals. We are not worthy of you. Little celestial being's face turned red and white. This was no different from slapping him. This gorgeous and enchanting woman was really hateful. However, he could only endure it. His knuckles turned green from clenching. Little Empyrean is still a child, full of youthful vigor. If he has offended anyone, I ask everyone to be magnanimous enough to forgive him. Those who come to my Panlei are all honored guests. The old woman said sincerely, but there was a trace of cold light that flashed past the depths of her eyes. Is that so? He is still a child. You and this old man are not young anymore. Didn't you say that we should be suppressed first regardless of anything else? The Phoenix goddess did not let go. The others nodded in agreement. It was obvious that these two were siding with their kin and not with reason. They came up to them and wanted to kill them without any reason. If it wasn't for Longma's ridiculously high cultivation, he would have most likely been turned into minced meat. Zhang Qingyang made his move. He used his pure psyche power to form a spiritual channel to plunder some valuable information from the little celestial being's ocean of consciousness. He wanted to see what was strange about the Panlei. Master, they seem to have gotten their hands on a heavenly book. That's why they're going to Middle Earth to preach. They want to gather pure psychokinesis. The little Taoist master immediately received this news. I see, no wonder they wanted to destroy our celestial court's building and burn Master's statue, Zhang Yifan said. In the ancient times, some ancient sects had already discovered the wonderful use of psychokinesis, but it was also very limited. According to legend, there was only one person of the devil path who became successful and gave birth to a devil fetus. Zhang Qingyang frowned. He received this information from the little celestial being's ocean of consciousness. The heavenly book obtained in Panlei seemed to be related to this. These are just external forces. They can help you reach the strongest level quickly, but it's extremely difficult to use them to reach the sky. Longma curled its lips. Although it was born in Kunlun, it was a divine steed with intelligence after all. It more or less knew some secrets. Did anyone in the past use this to prove their Tao? Yi Fan asked. I heard that there was one. I don't know which ancient planet he's on. He's been around for a long time. I think he must have passed away in meditation tens of thousands of years ago, Longma said. There was once a mysterious elder in Kunlun who came from the outer realm. When Longma was young, he passed on his dharma access to cultivation and talked about an ancient matter. Unfortunately, time was like a knife and showed no mercy. Before Longma grew up, the elder had already passed away. Who dares to cause trouble in my Panlé? The void opened up and a realm gate appeared. A group of people rushed out. The one in the lead was an old man. His arms reached his knees and his eyes were like golden lanterns. He looked like an old ape. One look and one could tell he was a master who was protective of his children. Who are you people? How dare you behave atrociously in Panlé? Don't you know what kind of place this is? Don't even think about leaving after injuring the people of my sect. His arms reached his knees and the mysterious technique he displayed was also very special. Although he was of the human race, he used the divine ape mysterious technique. A dharma image of heaven and earth almost pierced through the sky. He transformed into a giant and stomped down on everyone. An ancient sect master-level figure? Yu Weiyu and the others cried out in surprise. Although they knew that Panlé was one of the 3 immortal mountains and had endless spiritual energy since ancient times, they could feel the great Tao. The cultivation environment hadn't changed much, but they still couldn't help but be astonished. In terms of overall strength, the immortal islands in the sea were much more terrifying than the Earth Tao sect. In such a short period of time, a sect master had already appeared. It's too late for regrets. Panlé isn't a place where you can show off your might. His huge foot blotted out the sky and shattered the void. It was like a demonic cloud descending. It's been many years since someone dared to step on me, Yifan said. Longma was rather arrogant. It's not like I haven't stepped on you before. Although I didn't succeed, you can't avoid this fact. At this moment, it suddenly became ferocious from returning to its original state. Flames danced all over its body and instantly enlarged. It stretched out a huge horse hoof and smashed over, exchanging kicks with the others. The eyes of the old man who displayed the Dharma image of heaven and earth rapidly narrowed. He was shocked in his heart. The moment Longma's aura appeared, he felt a great sense of danger. How is this possible? He didn't dare to believe it. He knew that the environment in the outside world had changed greatly. A second-level immortal foundation character like him could already be considered a supreme expert. However, this hot-tempered Longma was suppressing him to the point where he felt like he was about to suffocate. He initially thought that he was comparable to an ancient sect master, and as long as he acted, he would be able to capture any opponent easily. But now things were different. Chi. Longma was extremely wild. It kicked out with its hind leg, and the old man let out a scream of misery. One of his legs couldn't be found as bone fragments mixed with blood splattered all over the place. You even dare to be arrogant before this seat? Do you think you are a titan? Even if a true ancient sect master came, he would still have to lie down before me. Longma arrogantly inclined its head. The pair of dragon horns on its head glowed with electricity as they shot out 2 bolts of scarlet lightning, instantly lacerating the skin and flesh of this major character as a charred smell wafted from his body. And all of you, kneel down and pay your respects to me. It was like a ferocious beast as it commanded the group of people in the distance. Compared to auspicious beasts, it was worlds apart. Zhang Qingyang wanted to ask Yifan if this was really Longma. Why did it feel like a tyrannical tyrant? Was this really a mount that only ancient sacred emperors could possess? This caused the few of them to exchange mutual glances. The phoenix goddess smiled, indicating that evil people needed to be tempered by evil horses. This should be how things should be. Don't think about leaving. Longma let out a long neigh, leaving behind a stretch of flames. It galloped through the air, smashing everyone down with a single hoof. It even trampled the old man who thought that he was an ancient sect master, and felt that he was unrivaled under the heavens until he was half dead. This old man who was very protective of his own people was now in a daze. What was going on in this world? Wasn't the Middle-earth in the end of the world? But to think that a true Longma actually appeared in this world. Then, Yifan personally took action. His body erupted with immortal splendor, seizing the valuable information from the space between this old man's brows. With a point of his finger, no secrets could be hidden from him. You. This old man was horrified. What kind of character was this? He was treated like an ant, easily opening up his sea of consciousness, leaving him powerless to resist. It was as if he was facing an ancient heavenly dragon. He really obtained a heavenly book. Someone in Panlé has cultivated it to some extent. Yi Fan frowned. The scriptures Panlé obtained were no small matter. Following that, he carefully probed everyone's sea of consciousness, obtaining quite a bit of information. He then looked into the distance and said, "Let's go to that immortal mountain." Yi Fan rode on Longma's body and brought a few disciples through the void. Soon after, they appeared in a holy land. Auspicious light danced about in this place and auspicious splendor shot out. Streak after streak of light scattered over the mountains. This was the base of Panlé's immortal sect. When they hurried over, they just happened to see a great banner fluttering. A group of experts came out and were about to face them. The one in the lead was a middle-aged man dressed in purple robes with a white jade belt around his waist. He was rather dignified. Beside him, there were a few men standing side by side. All of them emitted powerful auras and rushed over like a flood. Everyone stared at Yi Fan and the others. This world hasn't dried up yet. Panlé's immortal sect is indeed extraordinary, said Yi Fan. 5 mighty figures suddenly appeared on the other side. It was like a fantasy story in this era. That was because these weren't people who had survived since the ancient times. Their ages should be over 1,000 years old. And they weren't all that old. Invading my Panlé without reason, who are you all? The middle-aged man in the lead asked. He was precisely the Lord of Panlé, an exceptional mighty figure, who could look down on the world. I am the Lord of the Celestial Court. I heard that establishing a sect in the Central Lands requires the approval of Panlé. Thus, I came all the way here to seek guidance, said Yi Fan. Before the ancient sages left, they had ordered my Panlé to protect the human world. They didn't want any unforeseen events to happen. You all recklessly used the name Celestial Court and triggered the heavenly laws, said the Lord of Panlé with a heavy voice. Longma didn't seem to care in the slightest. Why have I never heard of the heavenly laws? Who was the one who set them? Zhang Yifan also spoke up. The ancient sages told you all to protect the human world, so you all can continue. My teacher established a sect, but I need your permission. Interfering like this is a bit too domineering. When the elders are speaking, how can you juniors interrupt? An individual from Panlé whose status wasn't low berated. On the other side, the banners fluttered, and a black mass of troops appeared. Panlé was clearly enraged. Another person swept his cold gaze over and said, "You even dare to speak so carelessly about a mount. Do you even know the rules?" Yi Fan got off the horse very consciously. He knew that this person with a violent temper was definitely going to act up. As expected, Longma let out a long roar and naturally stood up. He transformed into a streak of fiery light and rushed over. "I'll step on your lungs." Oofed. That pitiful expert had just berated a mount for speaking without rules when he was slapped by Longma's basin-sized hooves. Even his lungs were trampled out. Longma displayed its might and charged around. All the banners were flipped over, and over 20 mountain peaks were trampled into powder. Everywhere it passed, the heavens collapsed and the earth caved in. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as flames soared into the sky. This was an auspicious beast. Once it displayed its might, all kinds of worldly phenomena appeared. In addition to its own magical power that was like the sea of stars, it was unstoppable. How could these people block it? Suddenly, a light shout rang out. A 5-colored divine light rushed out from the head of the master of Panlé. A treasured tree rushed out from the top of his head, and shook down thousands of mountains of brilliance, striking towards Longma. Its saintly might rumbled like a rainbow piercing through the sun. "Evil creature, you dare to come to Panlé and behave atrociously. Death is at hand." This was a sacred tree, a weapon forged by an ancient saint. It possessed great power as if an ancient saint had come back to life. Even though Longma was a king of the Severing Tao, it didn't dare to use a sacred weapon because the difference was too great. Once it became a saint, all beings, including kings, would be no match for it at all. Longma possessed extreme speed. It turned into a streak of fiery light and rushed out, avoiding the heaven-covering Saint Might. However, That sacred tree released a streak of 5-colored divine light, and it still swept downwards. Yi Fan had no choice but to take action. A black arrow appeared in his hand, and with a forceful slash, dark light erupted and surged outwards like a black sea. Hong! The 5-colored divine light scattered. That sacred tree flew out in reverse, and the master of Panlei also flew out horizontally. Blood sprayed out from his mouth and nose. This was the result of Yi Fan's leniency. Celestial being, please come into being and kill this evil creature. Everyone was shocked. They never expected the intruder to be so terrifying. Many people shouted towards the mountain range depths, where immortal splendor flowed. In the distance, the great mountains rumbled. All of the mountain peaks were moving, quickly moving to the side, and revealing an enormous Tao platform. Divine rings surrounded it one after another. Yi Fan was shocked. That Tao platform was extremely mysterious. It had a total of 5 colors, and it was made of the same material as the 5-colored altar. In addition, the great Tao resonated. Light transformed true dragon's sword, and immortal splendor cast phoenixes danced about. It was mysterious and unfathomable. Streak after streak of divine radiance pervaded the air, brightly illuminating that place. A deity-like existence sat on top. Chapter 10:18. The great Tao resonated. True dragons and phoenixes formed from immortal splendor shook the heavens. Tens of thousands of strands of auspicious light shone resplendently on the Tao platform. A middle-aged man surrounded by a divine ring stood up. His black hair was thick and his eyes were bright. He couldn't be considered heroic, but he possessed a bewitching temperament. He was like the reincarnation of a demonic fetus, making others involuntarily feel reverence. Esteemed guests have arrived. Apologies for not coming out to greet you. Unexpectedly, Panlei's celestial being didn't take action. On the contrary, he had a pleasant expression on his face. He stepped down from the 5-colored Tao platform and arrived in front of them in an instant. Longma's heart jumped. This was a great magical technique. A single step covered several dozen li ordinary people definitely couldn't use it. This middle-aged man's strength made people feel restraining fear. He was undoubtedly a Tao-severing expert. If he didn't guess incorrectly, he was definitely a great king-level expert. He was the most powerful expert Yi Fan had seen on Earth so far. Even though Panglai's celestial being had concealed his aura, his own power was transmitted through a certain temperament. At Yi Fan's level, he could naturally sense it and discover its essence. This was a person from the great ancient era. Otherwise, he wouldn't have this kind of cultivation. A great king-level expert could be called a human expert no matter where he was placed. It wouldn't be too far to say that he was the #1 expert on Earth. This person's eyes were like stars. There was a mysterious power within them. It was likely that he had cultivated that heavenly book to a shocking level. His black hair scattered behind him, and he exuded an imposing aura without being angry. Panglai is isolated from the rest of the world. It's been many years since we've left the outside world, so some of our disciples have become impetuous. We've made a fool of ourselves in front of fellow Taoists. The Empyrean was very polite and easygoing. He had reprimanded his own disciples as soon as he came out, telling them to put away their weapons and greet the esteemed guests. This was completely outside of Yi Fan's expectations. Since the other party was so polite, they couldn't criticize him. Even Longma withdrew in embarrassment and returned the 5-colored tree to the sect master of Panlei. To be honest, it was extremely displeased. This was a sage ritual implement that had been shot down by Yi Fan with the black arrow. It just so happened that it had been snatched away by it, and it could not bear to part with it. A great battle was put to an end, and the tense atmosphere dispersed. Yi Fan and the others stepped into the Gate of Immortals. This place was filled with cliffs and beautiful mountains. Divine vines coiled around them, auspicious light filled the area, and the fragrance of ancient medicines filled the air. There were even red-crowned cranes fluttering about, spirit springs gurgling, and flowing with brilliant colors. It was truly a pure land. The disciples of Panlei were more or less unwilling. After so many years, this was the first time someone had dared to come knocking on their door. A Longma had trampled on Panlei and razed the mountain gate to the ground. Dozens of mountains had been trampled and collapsed, which made them feel indignant. The path to immortality is rugged and full of trials and tribulations. One's temperament is especially important. I've been negligent. For so many years, I've only focused on refining my Taoist body in seclusion. I didn't expect that a few good-for-nothing disciples would be so full of themselves. Peng Lai celestial being was merciless as he reprimanded the almighty disciples. Their faces turned red, and they didn't dare to retort. Why did you offend Tao Brother Yi? Ling Xiao made a trip to Middle-earth. He said that there was a sect that stole the faith of all living beings, and called themselves the Celestial Court, so he took action to punish them. Said the sect master of Panlei. The so-called Ling Xiao was the little celestial being. He was also the direct descendant of this great king in front of them, and possessed an extraordinary identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been protected like this. After hearing this, celestial being nodded and said, Tao Brother Yi, don't lower yourself to the same level as a child. They only make a trip out once every few decades to 100 years, so they don't understand Middle-earth at all. They only hear wind and rain. They're young and impetuous, and they always like to act impulsively. What could Yi Fan say? The other party had already said this much, and the Longma had already taken action, trampling the group of people until they were seriously injured. That little celestial being had even almost been broken into two, so he couldn't push them too far. Afterwards, they chatted happily and discussed Tao techniques. This celestial being spoke of many cultivation insights, and they were all words of experience. Even in ancient times, when one's cultivation reached this realm, one would still be an extraordinary figure. Even though there were many sages in that era, many of them were outsiders and not true natives. Yi Fan felt deep admiration. This person's Tao technique was exceptional, and the method he cultivated was unique. To be able to reach this step and become a great king, he was definitely an outstanding figure. Peng Lai celestial being bluntly said that establishing a sect was fine, but naming it the Celestial Court was indeed a bit of a taboo. Back then, even the ancient sages did their utmost to avoid it. They weren't willing to touch these two words, fearing that there would be a disaster. He kindly reminded them that there was indeed such a rule in the unwritten heavenly laws of ancient times. It was best to avoid it if possible, or else there might be great trouble in the future. Oh, there was such a thing? Could it be that even the name of ancient heaven has become taboo? Is it because there are people from outside this region who are watching over it? Yi Fan asked. It's hard to say. Towards some things, it's better for us to feel reverence in our hearts, celestial being said. Yi Fan nodded. Then he asked about the five-colored altar. This was what he was most concerned about. He wanted to find an ancient path that led into the depths of the starry skies. In the distance, the five-colored Tao platform flowed with brilliant colors. The aura of the great Tao pervaded the air. There was no mistaking the material used to construct the starry domain altar. Celestial being sighed. When the ancient sages left, they didn't leave behind any coordinates of the starry skies. Even though there were a few secret areas with five-colored altars, later generations didn't know how to open them. Has no one explored them before? Yi Fan didn't give up. Celestial being stared blankly at the five-colored Tao platform in the distance. Then he said, those secret areas are all extremely dangerous. To tell you the truth, I do know a place. This Tao platform was obtained from there. Unfortunately, my strength is limited and I can't enter it. Oh, there's such a place? Could Celestial being tell me and let me take a look? Peng Lai celestial being nodded. Of course, he couldn't leave immediately. Etiquette was unavoidable, so he invited them to drink some spiritual tea. Yi Fan rode over on Longma, leaving Celestial being and Panlei shaken. After asking around, he learned that it came from Kunlun. His eyes flickered with brilliance as he repeatedly sighed in admiration. Do you know what kind of people live in the other two immortal mountains? Yi Fan asked. Panlei, Fangzong, and Yingzhou were the three immortal mountains in the outer seas. They were extremely famous and had been passed down since ancient times. Kunlun was rarely mentioned among the people. Most people only knew about Panlei. Both Fangzong and Yingzhou have experts overseeing them. If I were to mention their ancestors, I think Brother Yi might have heard of them. Celestial being smiled. Oh, I'd like to hear more about it. Yi Fan asked for guidance. There are descendants of ancestor Peng on Fangzhong, and descendants of Su Fu on Yingzhou. When Yi Fan heard this, he was immediately shocked, revealing a strange expression. These two were both famous qi practitioners, recorded in ancient books. Su Fu's strength wasn't that profound, but he once helped the first emperor find the elixir of immortality. He led many boys and girls out to sea, which was recorded in historical records. According to Prenglai celestial being, Su Fu eventually arrived at Yingzhou. He didn't find the elixir of immortality, so he didn't return. One of his descendants was extraordinarily talented and obtained the inheritance of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. He was still alive and had a certain decision-making power on the island. Ancestor Peng was a famous qi practitioner in the pre-Qin dynasty. He was mentioned in various ancient books of Taoism. It was inferred that he might have obtained the incomplete formula of the 9 secrets, which was why his art of nourishing life was unparalleled. His descendants went out to sea and finally arrived at Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. It was one of the major inheritances on the Immortal Island and held great importance. It's said that the 3 immortal mountains overseas have the elixir of immortality. I wonder if it's true? Lama asked. He put away his violent temper and really looked like an auspicious beast. It has been passed down since ancient times, but no one has seen it. I think even if there was, it would have been taken away by the ancient saint emperor and entered the boundless starry sky. Celestial being shook his head. Panlei, Fangzhong, and Yingzhou were the 3 immortal mountains overseas. They were extremely famous during the ancient times. Many sages came and went, leaving behind many inheritances. However, ever since the world changed, many inheritances left. Even though the spiritual energy of the 3 immortal mountains didn't decrease by much, it had already declined. The inheritances were less than 10% of what they used to be. In the end, Celestial Being led the way and personally brought Yi Fan to a sea region. They went deep into the underwater world and arrived in front of an ocean palace. This place was desolate and the fishes and prawns didn't dare enter. Is this the ancient dragon palace? Zhang Qingyang and the others were astonished. This palace was incomparably grand. Even though the walls were already in ruins, one could imagine how glorious and grand it was in the past. There were giant jade pillars everywhere, just like a heavenly palace. This place was extremely vast and continuous. After endless years, there were still many intact ancient palaces. They were imposing and magnificent. They were sparkling and translucent, emitting precious light. Celestial Being stopped at the deepest part of this ocean palace and said, "It's too dangerous ahead. We can't proceed any further. I can only lead the way here." Up ahead, there was a crystal-like palace that flickered with life in the depths of the ocean. It blossomed with dazzling light like a divine watchtower. There were enormous pillars and majestic halls. It was so dazzling that one couldn't open their eyes. Meanwhile, at the center of this continuous chain of precious watchtowers was a 5-colored stone mountain. It was like a tomb as it stood at the center, and was surrounded by many ancient palaces. Celestial Being said that his 5-colored Tao platform was taken from here. Back then, he spent a great deal of effort and a long time before succeeding. He repeatedly warned Yi Fan to be careful when entering, and then turned around to leave. The myriad energy cauldron took in and sent out divine force wisps. Yi Fan collected all of the disciples inside, and then handed them over to Longma. At the same time, he took out a black arrow to protect himself. "Don't go back to Panlei. Be careful and protect them well. Wait for me to come out," warned Yi Fan. Longma was naturally unwilling. This place definitely had secret treasures. Even if it was dangerous, it was worth the risk. There would most likely be great rewards. However, in the end, it didn't enter and ran away. When Yi Fan entered this crystal palace, he immediately felt waves of killing intent. There was definitely an ancient formation protecting this place, warning people not to approach. Crystalline light flowed in all directions. It was like a dreamlike world. This place was truly as grand as an ancient dragon palace. The only thing that wasn't harmonious was the 5-colored stone pile at the center. There was a type of demonic power. Yi Fan came precisely for this 5-colored tomb. If he wanted to find the coordinates of the starry sky ancient path, then he had to find this kind of thing first. Perhaps there would be some clues. This isn't a tomb, but an ancient sealed land. When he got closer, he walked around this five-colored divine altar a few times. He revealed an astonished expression. A seal made of this kind of five-colored stone was no small matter. Yi Fan's heart was alarmed. He quickly retreated with the travel formula. However, a terrifying power quickly erupted from the sealed land. A huge tearing force twisted towards him, trying to pull him over. His heart was shaken. This was a saint's might. The aura covered the sky and covered the earth. It was so powerful that it was shocking. It wasn't that Yi Fan didn't have his guard up. However, he didn't expect a living ancient saint to be sealed in the ancient dragon palace at the bottom of the sea. This was a huge danger. He used the travel formula, and his body turned into a bolt of lightning, rushing out of the crystal palace. He wanted to escape as soon as possible and leave this extremely terrifying danger zone. Once he became a saint, he would be high and mighty. Just based on battle prowess and speech, he could almost be said to have surpassed the scope of humans. He could even look down on the Tao executioners like ants. Rumble, rumble, rumble. All of the crystal palaces shifted, blocking Yi Fan's path. They turned into an ancient killing formation that had been completely activated. It was unknown how many times more terrifying it was before. This was an ancient formation laid down by an ancient saint. In the distance, Penglai celestial being's face was cold. Both of his hands were moving. He was the one who activated this ancient formation. His eyes were cold and devoid of any emotion. I obtained the five-colored Tao platform and the ancient heavenly book from here. There is one thing I forgot to tell you. There is also an ancient demonic fetus sealed here. You can wait here for your death. I will go kill Longma and your disciple first. Then I will come back and watch you slowly wither away. Celestial being seemed to have changed into a different person. His eyes were dark as he spoke coldly. Then he turned around and left. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Yi Fan's mouth. He said to his back, "Do you think I don't know about your trap? Since I dared to come, I naturally have no fear. I will go collect your corpse in a bit. You should first pass through the ancient demonic saint. No one can live in the sealed land, haha." Celestial being laughed cruelly. He said coldly, "I will go kill Longma and the others first." Then he disappeared. Chapter 1019. Haha. Celestial being's laughter was very cold. His long black hair was loose and his eyes were extremely demonic. He left without looking back. In his eyes, Yi Fan was already a dead man. There was no way he could survive. Even a half-saint would not be able to survive if he was trapped in this formation. This was the power of an ancient saint, unparalleled in the world. He traveled dozens of miles with each step. His speed was extremely fast. His powerful divine sense swept out, and every blade of grass and tree in this world was in his mind. There was nowhere to hide as he chased in one direction. When Yi Fan approached the ancient dragon palace, Celestial being indeed left to avoid arousing suspicion. He didn't dare to use his divine sense. However, he believed that no one could escape in such a short time, and he could find them. Even if you are Longma, you won't be able to. I have learned the divine light escape and am even faster than you. Penglai celestial being sneered. He was a person who had survived since ancient times. Back then, there were many sages who stayed in Penglai. He had a great fortune and obtained a peerless secret technique from an ancient king of saints. The divine light escape was known as the ultimate technique. It was said that apart from the travel formula, it was the world's #1 speed technique. The 9 secrets had been lost for many years. Therefore, the divine light escape had become the most precious secret technique. The Sea of Penglai is protected by an ancient formation. It won't be easy for you to pass through it. Celestial being's expression was cold and murderous. He sensed the trajectory of Longma and the others. He turned into a beam of divine light and chased after them. Finally, a few hundred miles away, he saw a streak of fiery light. It transformed into a path that spread out on the surface of the sea, and the dragon horse was striding forward. The smile on Celestial being's face became even wider. Longma was very leisurely and wasn't in a hurry to leave. He was leisurely strolling in the sea with Yi Fan's disciples. He let out a clear hiss, and the entire sea immediately flowed backwards into the 9 heavens. The vast expanse immediately boiled, and a tsunami occurred. The waves seemed to have exploded, and the scene was terrifying. Longma's divine sense was extremely powerful, and it had already sensed the arrival of danger. With a long roar, a dragon's roar tore through the sky, and its entire body was covered in flames. It swept up Yin Xiaoyu and the others, and it charged out. Boom! One of Peng Lai's celestial being's black hands slammed down, crushing the sky into pieces. The ocean below was evaporated in an instant, and thousands of meters of water turned into nothingness and burned away, revealing the seabed. One could imagine how powerful it was. Rumble! The surrounding seawater filled in, and the blue waves quickly buried the trench, turning it into a country of water once more. Longma stood on the surface of the sea in the distance, puffing out white smoke from his nostrils. He was obviously very angry. The faces of the Phoenix Goddess, Zhang Yifan, and the others were pale. A casual attack from a great perfection king tier was already so terrifying. Who in the world could contend against him? One could imagine that if Peng Lai's celestial being used his full strength, the entire ocean could be evaporated, and the saying that the seas would dry up and the rocks would decay would become true. Moving mountains and overturning seas were all small tricks, and they were nothing compared to this person before them. The legendary Great Perfection King Tyr was a venerable even in ancient times. Celestial being, what is the meaning of this? Asked Zhang Qingyang. After so many years, he had become more and more mature. In the process of preaching to various places, he had also been baptized, and he truly had the demeanor of a heavenly master. In this kind of situation, he knew that the situation was very bad. A Great Perfection King Tyr was enough to sweep through this ancient planet. Right now, he was only trying to stabilize this person and delay as much time as possible until Yi Fan returned. Peng Lai's celestial being's face was full of indifference, completely different from his previous enthusiasm. With a hint of contempt, he said, "Just a few juniors like you dare to question me? Even the gods won't be able to save you. Celestial being, for someone of your status, it is truly beneath your status to be respectful at first and then belittle me later. It makes people feel like you are a vile character." Zhang Qingyang's expression was calm as he said, "At this realm, if you are a character, you should fight fair and square with my master. What's the point of playing these kinds of tricks? This seat eliminated a great enemy without any effort. This is a method to eliminate enemies, and I don't want to waste my breath on you juniors." Peng Lai's celestial being wore a cruel smile and ignored Zhang Qingyang. At this moment, there was only Longma left in his eyes. Only this auspicious beast was worth making a move against. "You traitor! What else do you have apart from these kinds of underhanded methods? Come at me. This seat will make your face bloom with a single hoof and let you know what brilliance is." Longma cast a sidelong glance at him and felt extremely displeased. Peng Lai's celestial being snorted coldly. With his status, when had he ever met such an idiot? This auspicious beast was completely different from what he had imagined. It didn't have the elegance of an ancient sacred emperor's mount at all. The people of Panlei received the news and saw that celestial being had made a move, almost evaporating the seawater. The cult master led the army over and waved their banners. The armored cavalry covered the surface of the sea, forming a dark mass. "Let's see where you will go this time." In the crowd, little celestial being's lungs were about to explode. The veins on his forehead bulged and his eyes burned with fury as he stared at Zhang Qingyang, the Phoenix Goddess, and the others. "Don't let a single one go. Kill them all." The cult master of Panlei gave the order. The army surrounded them and cut off their path of retreat, trapping the disciples of Yi Fan. The golden scales on Longma's body flickered and flames danced. It turned into a ray of fiery light and charged over. The horse stepped on the sky and everywhere it passed, the sea dried up and the sky cracked. It went straight for celestial being. Bang! Peng Lai's celestial being's hand formed a seal, and a beam of demonic light flew out. The law of the order of heaven and earth covered the sky and earth, blocking Longma and causing its body to shake violently. This seat cherishes the fact that you are Longma, a rare auspicious beast in this world. I don't want to strangle you. Are you willing to follow me and become my mount? Peng Lai's celestial being's eyes were demonic and his black hair moved with the wind. He stood on the surface of the sea and said calmly, "This dragon will stomp on your face until it's full of pockmarks. Why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Even if you turn around and become my mount, I don't want you. Longma spat out white air from its nostrils. Not far away, Dragon Sparrow opened his mouth and said coldly, "Only the ancient divine emperor can use Longma as a mount. You are delusional enough to think that you can ride Longma. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning?" Everyone in Panlé was furious. Many people loudly rebuked him and forbade him from blaspheming celestial being. They even pointed out that even Yi Fan could possess Longma, so why couldn't celestial being? My master is often struck by lightning and can completely endure it. Can you celestial being do it? It was surprising that the Phoenix goddess could still smile at this time. The other disciples were speechless, especially Komatsu, who was scratching his head because his master had indeed said that he had been struck by lightning all the way since he started cultivating. What celestial court? From today onwards, you shall be removed from my name and cease to exist forever. The hierarch of Panlé ordered. He wanted to kill everyone here. The little Taoist master sneered and said, "What celestial emperor? He's now a dead ghost. Back then, I burned his divine statue, and now my ancestor has set a trap to refine him into ashes and dung. He's nothing." Yu Weiyu and the others were furious. They had no other choice but to fight. However, they didn't believe that Yi Fan was dead. They firmly believed that no one in the world could hurt him. "I'll ask again. Are you willing to become my mount? Only then can I spare your life," Penglai celestial being asked. Longma stood up like a human and responded with a pair of hooves as big as a face. He slapped at the top of his head and started a great battle. "Although you're a natural variant with a bloodline that's unparalleled in the world, you're still not enough compared to a late-stage king like me." Penglai Heavenly Sovereign's magic power was as vast as the ocean, and his aura was completely overwhelming. He held a 5-colored holy tree in his hand and swept it forward. Longma let out a long hiss. The myriad chi cauldron appeared above his head, and tens of thousands of silk ribbons fell down to protect him. At the same time, he opened his mouth and spat out a black light. It was the black arrow that blocked the 5-colored holy tree. Longma was almost invincible among those at the same level, but he was facing a great king who was about to stand at the peak. It was too difficult to fight against such a person. "Evil creature, you still won't surrender even when death is at hand. See how I deal with you." Penglai celestial being's magic power was like the sea. Black light shot out from his body in all directions. He was like a demonic fetus that looked down on the world. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. He was emotionless and cold. An intense battle erupted. The sea region in all directions was thrown into chaos. Everyone had no choice but to retreat. A battle between kings was the most terrifying. Everyone's face turned pale. Longma used the myriad chi cauldron to protect himself, and the black arrow to block the 5-colored holy tree. However, there was a difference of many small realms between the two. The difference was huge. If it was any other Dao severing expert at the same level as him, they would definitely be turned into ashes in front of a great king. It roared towards the sky and was filled with anger. Its 4 hooves stomped down, shattering the sky. The scene was horrifying. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Yen Xiaoyu and the others were anxious. The current situation was grim. As long as Longma was subdued, they would definitely die. "My teacher will definitely rush over. You can only be complacent for now," Zhang Yifan said. "He is already a dead man. He will never have a chance. The Holy Land will become his grave. He is less than a bug there," Penglai celestial being said coldly. His eyes were filled with cruelty and disdain. "What?" Zhang Qingyang and the others were all stunned. A living saint was still extremely terrifying even if he was sealed. In the current world, ancient saints were comparable to heavenly deities. "He is already a dead man. I won't bother with him." Penglai celestial being's face was filled with mockery. He didn't care at all. It was as if everything was under his control. Suddenly, a shocking change occurred. When Longma and celestial being were fighting at close range, the blood chi in the all-being source energy cauldron filled the sky. Golden light flooded the entire ocean. A majestic figure rushed out and punched forward. Everything happened too fast. It was unimaginably fast. It was beyond everyone's imagination. Even if Penglai celestial being cultivated the divine light escape technique, it was not enough. At such a close distance, there was no way he could dodge. Teacher! Zhang Yifan, Yin Xiaoyu and the others cried out in surprise. Yifan's body was like a flood dragon. His entire body seemed to be cast from gold. His battle chi was vast and mighty. He used the Xing formula and in a flash, he clashed with Penglai celestial being. Close combat. His black hair was disheveled, and his eyes shone with cold lightning. Like a fiend god, he struck out with the fist of 6 paths of reincarnation, and collided with Heavenly Lord Penglai's palms. On the spot, the divine power shook the 4 seas. This area was filled with water vapor. The sea was completely dried up. Celestial being's palms were immediately turned into a bloody pulp. His bones were crushed into pieces. No one in this world could fight with the human saint body in close combat. Penglai celestial being was completely dumbfounded. He had seen Yifan enter the danger zone and activate the ancient spell formation with his own hands. His opponent would die without a doubt. How did he suddenly appear in front of him? Yifan's entire body was resplendent. His body was like a glazed divine gold. Precious light shot out in all directions. He stretched out his arms and legs. His black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were terrifying. He was like a god of war, unstoppable. No matter how powerful the Penglai heavenly sovereign was, he couldn't block this attack. In close combat, not even great perfection kings were enough. In the blink of an eye, one of his arms was torn off. Blood gushed out, and he couldn't help but release a muffled groan. It was too bitter. What's going on? Everyone from the celestial school in Penglai was dumbfounded. How could such a sudden change happen? They couldn't believe it. I know. Phoenix Goddess suddenly realized and said, Teacher comprehended the 3 Pure Ones technique in Mount Zhongnan, and cultivated a Tao body. The one who entered the ancient spell formation wasn't his real body. The few of them finally understood why Yifan had handed the myriad chi cauldron to the dragon horse before entering the Crystal Palace. He should have brought it in to protect himself. It turned out that it had left together with them, and had been following them all this while. A blood-curdling scream came from the battlefield. The people of the Penglai school were scared witless. They were so scared that their scalps went numb and their bodies trembled. In the middle of the battlefield, Yifan's black hair was in a mess. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. He grabbed both of Penglai celestial being's legs and chopped him on the spot. His body was split into 2 halves, and fresh blood dyed the sea red. Who could resist him in close combat? Unrivaled in the world, Penglai celestial being naturally had to die with a grievance. A small black figure the size of a fist rushed out from between celestial being's eyebrows. It turned into a streak of black light and fled into the horizon. You still want to leave? Yifan's voice was cold and emotionless as he said. Today the celestial school of Penglai will be erased. This place will become the immortal foundation of my celestial court. He threw down the 2 halves of his body and chased after celestial being. Everyone trembled. The situation changed so quickly that it exceeded their expectations. Yifan fought in close combat against an Empyrean. He was like an ancient heavenly deity, sweeping through everything in his path. The blood on his hands made him look incredibly divine and majestic. The people of Penglai were completely terrified. They had a bad premonition. Even celestial being ended up like this. How could they fight against him? Little celestial being's face turned pale immediately. He was scared to death. Yifan turned into a streak of lightning and chased after the small black primordial spirit. He didn't want to let it go. I'll step on your lungs. Longma ran and stepped on celestial being's body that was split into 2. He realized that his body was actually reassembling and merging into one. Pfft! The pitiful Penglai celestial being's body was just about to reassemble when Longma's huge hooves stomped him into the sea. His flesh was badly mangled, and his bones were broken. His last chance to reassemble his body failed. Longma did as it said. It crushed celestial being's lungs and turned his entire body into a bloody pulp before being buried in the fish's stomach. A great completion king had lost his most precious battle physique, just like that. He couldn't even use his overflowing magic power. At this moment, the small black person was as anxious as a stray dog. Where do you think you're going? Longma also surrounded Penglai celestial being. He turned into a streak of flame and rushed over. The fist-sized small black person was full of resentment and unwillingness as he resisted with all his might. Yifan wasn't in a hurry. He landed on Longma's body and held the black dragon spear he had obtained from Kunlun. He became one with the horse and turned into a blazing light as he rushed forward. With a pft sound, he nailed the small black person to the spear tip. A mournful scream resounded through the sky. Before I enter the starry sky, you will hand over the entire Ponlai to me. Many thanks for the gift. The celestial court will prosper here. Yifan's words spread through the entire sea region. Invincible under the starry sky, Yifan's disciples were incomparably excited. This was their first impression. Meanwhile, the people of Ponlai had ashen faces. Chapter 1020. Ah! The fist-sized black figure was nailed to the tip of the spear and cried out mournfully. This was a pure primordial spirit, and once it was damaged, the consequences would be unimaginable. Once a person's spirit was destroyed, they would completely disappear from this world. Penglai celestial being didn't want his spirit to be destroyed, and struggled with all his might. This was his imprint, and if it completely disappeared from this world, then all of eternity would be for naught. Black light flourished, and he turned into a black sun that shot out tens of thousands of black arrows. At the same time, a precious wheel appeared and spun behind his head. At the same time, a divine long river surged over from Ponlai Island like a rainbow piercing through the sun, quickly attacking Yifan and the others. Celestial being wanted to use this opportunity to break free. This was a pure power of faith. Penglai celestial being cultivated the ancient heavenly book and stole the psyche power of the people of the world. Now it was put to great use. It rumbled and resonated with the great Tao of heaven and earth. It's useless. You won't be able to escape today. The cauldron above Yifan's head trembled slightly, and the holy aura inside flourished even more. The cauldron flew out, and immediately, millions of auspicious lights illuminated the heavens. The surging river made a sizzling sound, and emitted wisps of white smoke, evaporating completely. The pure psyche power inside the cauldron was like an ocean, and the divine river was like a small sorcerer in the presence of a great sorcerer. The black spear in Yifan's hand trembled, and Penglai celestial being immediately cried out. The black figure's luster immediately dimmed, and it almost broke into pieces. It was difficult to defend against. Right now he was like a fish on the chopping block. His Tao body was destroyed, and his divine power turned to dust. Relying on his primordial spirit alone, no matter how great his cultivation was, it was useless. Yifan didn't kill him immediately, because there were many secrets to be found from his primordial spirit. This celestial being still had great value. Kill Ponlai's backbone without mercy. Yifan gave this order, letting Longma do as he pleased. He was going to start a massacre to establish his might. Longma sprinted over, turning into a streak of fiery light as he charged towards the sect master of Ponlai and the others, who could block the thunderous might of a severing path king. Yifan sat down cross-legged and carefully absorbed all kinds of valuable information from the black primordial spirit. He did not move for a long time. Spare me, Brother Yi, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this. Please let me live. Penglai celestial being pleaded. At this moment, his soul was about to leave his body. How could he resist with only his primordial spirit left? If he was nailed to this mysterious black spear, his body and soul would be destroyed at any moment. I wanted to let you go, but you brought about your own death. Yifan's face was ashen as he extracted one imprint after another from his sea of consciousness. He was astonished. This celestial venerable really had some great opportunities. In the ancient times he had received guidance from a saint king, and the divine light escape he cultivated was boundlessly profound. Even if he didn't use the secret character line, he was already unparalleled in the world. Brother Yi, please be magnanimous. I'll give you everything, including the ancient heavenly tomes, said Penglai celestial being while trembling. He no longer had a trace of the great accomplishment kings might. Even you yourself are my prisoner, let alone your things. What capital do you have to bargain? Yifan revealed a disdainful sneer. A person with this kind of temperament definitely couldn't be left alive. Otherwise, it would definitely be a great disaster in the future. It was fine if Yi Fan didn't make a move, but once he did, he wouldn't show any mercy. He would get rid of all troubles and wouldn't leave behind any hidden dangers. With a soft chi sound, he extracted a special imprint from the black primordial spirit. It was the scripture of the ancient heavenly tomes. His mind was immediately startled as he silently deduced and comprehended it. This was a demonic scripture. The method recorded was very profound, and there was a unique use of psychokinesis. No wonder Panlei also wanted to pass on the path. This was a difficult and profound orthodoxy. Yi Fan obtained a shocking secret. The demonic fetus suppressed in the ancient palace at the bottom of the sea came from the outer realm. He was a saint who lived up to his name. The inheritance of the heavenly tomes came from him. Moreover, his background was very powerful. Even the saint king who attacked in the ancient times was afraid, and didn't dare to completely destroy him. He only suppressed him in the demonic palace. In that era, there were indeed many saints in Panlei, said Yi Fan to himself. In the end, he completely searched through the imprint. With a forceful shake, the fist-sized little black person turned into ashes amidst a resentful and unwilling cry. It was forever erased from this world. In the distance, the great battle was already nearing its end. Longma surged and flames overflowed into the heavens. Wherever it passed, the heavens and earth split apart. Seawater poured into the heavens as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Yi Fan's expression was cold as he gazed into the distance. He stretched out his hand and pointed. The Panlei sect master released a loud cry and turned into ashes on the spot. He personally walked forward. The sect master level figures weren't enough either. There were some Panlei experts who resisted stubbornly and attacked him with all their might. In the end, they couldn't stop Yi Fan's Dao sword ripples. Pooh! His finger was like a sword. With a light shake, the golden sword ripples spread out in all directions like ripples. There was nothing it couldn't destroy. It attacked indiscriminately and turned a group of experts into a bloody paste. Waves of bloody mist drifted about. Little celestial being cried out loudly. One reason was because he was furious, and the other was because he was angered. A purple Komatsu mouse was jumping around in front of him while blinking its large eyes. It was extremely weird, so why couldn't he hit it? This truly drove him crazy. The Phoenix goddess laughed softly and said, "Little senior brother really is cute. He's so cute even when fighting against others." She surrounded little celestial being with Zhang Qingyang and the others. They heavily injured little celestial being on the spot. At this moment, little celestial being's face was completely pale. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he couldn't say anything when he opened his mouth. Not long ago, he had said everything ruthlessly and threatened to wipe out the celestial court. Now he could only be terrified. Don't kill the innocent. Only kill the core members and let the others live. Yi Fan transmitted his voice to Longma. This horse didn't look like a good fellow no matter how one looked at it. It was behaving atrociously on the ocean and chasing after the Panlei's leader. With its divine arts, it was naturally overwhelming. It was useless no matter how many people there were. Pooh! Yi Fan walked over and personally took action. He turned little celestial being into flying ashes with a finger, and then smashed the few powerhouses that Longma had captured into powder. He didn't hold back at all. After a quarter of an hour, the sea region quieted down. The Panlei sect master and the other core members were all killed, and not a single one survived. The ordinary members were practically unharmed, and Yi Fan didn't want to harm the harmony of the heavens. An hour later, they forced all the captives into the pure land of Panlei. Longma began to run wild again. Its four hooves stamped on the ground, and those that dared to obstruct it were sent flying with a kick. "You better take it easy." Yi Fan was furious. Longma was too savage. It sprinted along the way and practically crushed over a dozen mountain peaks with a single hoof. This was the Pure Land, and it was going to be the future base of the Celestial Court. In the end, this treasured land quieted down. Over 100 of the sect's leaders were executed, and the other members were trembling with fear. They were in a constant state of anxiety. An immortal sect that had been passed down since the ancient times was captured just like that. It was simply like a legend. From this day onwards, Yi Fan gave the order to seal off the mountains. He sat cross-legged on the main peak of Panlei and began to chant sutras. He gathered all the disciples of the immortal sect within the mountain gate. Gao Zhengzhua Shi, Pa Anai evil spirit. Bei Zhao Junjiang. Bai Nan Gui Kui. Jingyi Luo Guang. Origin immemorial enlightenment. Yi Fan's entire body was overflowing with brilliant colors. His body was like a divine body as he chanted the salvation scripture. Lotus flowers bloomed from his mouth and transformed into scriptures that were branded in the void. They possessed a mysterious power that could purify everyone's soul. He didn't want to bathe Panlei in blood because he couldn't do it. However, he didn't want to leave behind a great disaster for his disciples either. He would rush into the starry sky sooner or later. So who could suppress so many disciples of Panlei apart from him? The safest method was to expiate all of them and make them members of the celestial court. Not only would there be no hidden dangers, but there would also be an extra powerful force. The main peak of Panlei was suffused with immortal energy and multicolored light. Yi Fan sat there, his entire body bright and clean like seven-colored divine glass. All kinds of magical images appeared. In front of him was the golden palace Great Tao, and beside him were scenes of immortal kings descending from the 9 heavens. Behind him, primal chaos surged and nourished a green lotus. Runes flew out from his mouth one after another and blossomed with immortal brilliance, enveloping all the disciples. For the sake of safety, he lectured for a total of 49 days. During this period of time, tens of thousands of auspicious lights hung down from the sky. Sweet springs gushed out from the ground, and all kinds of exotic flowers bloomed. Orchids grew everywhere, and hundreds of birds came to pay homage. All kinds of auspicious and wonderful scenes appeared. Once he recited the scriptures, the devout believers' hearts would be clear. Twice he recited the scriptures, and worries would be gone. 3 times he recited the scriptures, and everyone would bow their heads. 4 times he recited the scriptures, and all the hidden ailments would be gone. 5 times he recited the scriptures, and the teeth would be reborn. Yi Fan had already severed the Tao, and his words were the law. All kinds of supernatural powers were unleashed through the scriptures, and the wondrous effects were endless. After 49 days, all the hidden ailments disappeared. The celestial court was thus on the right track. With a wonderful land in the human world, it was impossible for it not to develop and expand. The spiritual energy here was especially rich. Yi Fan didn't leave just like that, and stayed here for more than a year. One reason was to explore the demonic saints' sealed land under the sea, and the other was to hunt down the few big fish that escaped the net in Panlei. That day, not all the disciples of the sect were on the island. A few important figures were out, and so they escaped the calamity. Since Yi Fan made his move, he naturally wanted to completely wipe out the original celestial sect. He was iron-blooded and merciless. During this period of time, he and Longma split up, and they went to the ends of the earth to kill all of Penglai's celestial beings' favorite grandsons. This matter shocked the entire Taoist world. The original orthodoxy of Panlei was destroyed, and it was renamed the Celestial Court. Yi Fan's swift and decisive actions made many people uneasy, especially the abbot and Ingzhou of the 3 celestial islands. They were even more anxious. They sent masters to meet Yi Fan to see what he was thinking. Could it be that he wanted to unify the entire ancient star? In the end, Yi Fan released a very peaceful message, clearly telling all the observers that he would not attack unless he was attacked. This time, he only attacked to protect himself. Yi Fan stayed in Panlei for 3 years, and he observed the demon palace at the bottom of the sea carefully. He was sure that the demon fetus was like a lamp that had run out of oil, and it wouldn't last long. In the end, he added a few layers of seals. In these 3 years, he traveled all over the sea, went to the abbot, and went to Ingzhou, but he still couldn't find a way to leave, and there were no galactic coordinates. Perhaps he could get some information from the demon saint at the bottom of the sea, but it was too dangerous to bargain with a demon. He didn't want to play with fire, so he couldn't let it out no matter what. If I want to leave, maybe that's the only way. Yi Fan muttered to himself. He had already returned to this side of the starry sky for 13 years, and it was time to leave. On this day, he summoned all his disciples, bestowed them secret treasures, and imparted various secret arts such as the Divine Light Escape, Human Ruler Seal, and Heaven Flipping Seal. He told them that their fate had come to an end, and they were about to step into the starry sky. "Master, take us with you." The few disciples were all shocked. They didn't expect this day to come so suddenly. "I originally wanted to take all of you with me, but now that we have Panlay Immortal Mountain, you don't need to enter the starry sky. This place isn't much different from the ancient world, and it's very suitable for cultivation. And the other star field is too dangerous, full of battles. Even I can only stagger in blood and bones, and the slightest carelessness will lead to eternal damnation. It's a great era over there, where kings and races coexist. There are many corpses on the Emperor's path, and the Immortal Gate is about to open. It's full of variables and dangers." The few disciples all knew that Yi Fan wanted to walk the Emperor's path, and he might face a terrifying environment where the whole world was his enemy. There would be endless bloody battles in the future. "Master, I want to go with you." Dragon Sparrow usually didn't speak much, but now he was incomparably resolute and unwilling to give up. In addition, Zhang Yangqing also insisted on entering the starry sky, willing to go to the other side of the starry sky to preach. He was willing to step on this path no matter how dangerous it was. In the end, Yi Fan thought about it again and again, and agreed to take Dragon Sparrow and Zhang Qingyang with him. Komatsu cried loudly and grabbed a corner of Yi Fan's clothes, unwilling to let go. He cried and begged to go with him. "We'll meet again one day. As long as you can become a sage, you can cross the star field and find me among the 7 ancient stars." Yi Fan smiled and pointed at the Big Dipper in the sky.